Chapter 1884. Qin Zheng inclined his head and stared at the starry space before him. The experts who came here have all entered their respective constellations to cultivate. Even if Qin Wentian was here, it wouldn't be easy for him to locate them. This was the starry space and not the ground. If it was on the ground, his immortal sense would be able to envelop this boundlessly vast region, making it so that no one would be able to escape his eyes. But in the 9 heavenly layers, no matter how strong his immortal sense was, it was impossible for him to scan them. A single constellation in the 9 heavenly layers was already sufficiently vast, comparable to an immortal realm. Some people wanted to head to a constellation that was further away. If it wasn't for this ancient pathway that could shorten the distance, it was unknown how long they would have to spend if they had to travel by themselves. This ancient pathway seemed to be able to extend all the way to the 9 heavenly layers. Tell everyone to pay attention. Let's go to the constellations to take a look. Didn't you always want to go to the 9 heavenly layers? Now that you have finally arrived, it can be considered as fulfilling your dream. Qin Zheng held his wife's hand. The two of them walked forward together. Many people felt envy when they saw them. That was the Qin clan leader and Qin mother. Yet their relationship was still so good. Even the 2 leaders of the Qin clan were filled with curiosity towards the constellations, let alone the others. For the next few years, more and more people came here. After a few years, it could be said that over half of the peak characters of the supreme ancient immortal realms had appeared here. Luoshan Chuan also came. He came together with the demon sovereigns of the demon god mountain. When he saw the boundless starry space, his heart was filled with shock. This was too mystical. Luoshan Chuan and the others flew towards the constellations. For stellar martial cultivators, when they saw the source of their cultivation, the constellations, one could very well imagine how they would feel. Today in the sky, a constellation suddenly erupted with a startling radiance. This constellation was even brighter compared to the other constellations, shining with a dazzling light. This caused many people to turn their gazes over. They could see that the might of the great Tao was condensing on that constellation. Above that constellation, a human silhouette could be seen standing there. Originally, a person should be extremely tiny when standing on a constellation, but that constellation seemed to be able to reflect his silhouette in the light. That was a slender and extraordinarily handsome young man. At this moment, astral light flowed unceasingly around him, like divine essence cleansing his body. He's receiving the heavenly Tao. This is attaining the Tao. The eyes of some experts gleamed with sharpness. On the ancient heaven vault pathway, the first person to attain the Tao appeared. He was about to break through to the heavenly deity realm. Heavenly deities, this was an achievement that countless people would never be able to reach in their entire lives. But now there was actually someone who managed to do so within a few years of arriving on a constellation. Naturally, this was also possible because his cultivation base wasn't too far away from the heavenly deity realm. After that, he naturally broke through to the heavenly deity realm, and everything happened naturally. Another heavenly deity would appear in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Someone spoke. Heavenly deities were the ultimate peak existences in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Heavenly deities could establish heavenly deities, and even among the peak powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms, heavenly deities were considered the true core strength. He didn't know which force this heavenly god belonged to. Many people realized that they did not know the expert who had stepped into the divine state. That young man who broke through to the heavenly deity realm stood on the constellation, guiding the Tao into his body. A world appeared around him. It felt like he wanted to fuse together with the heavenly Taos and the constellation. Within this world, a terrifying energy circulated around it. This energy was none other than the samsara cycle. After cultivating for 2 lifetimes, I finally made up for the regrets of my previous life, and stepped out on a path that I had never walked before. The young man drew in a deep breath. He was none other than Hua Taishu. In his previous life, he was already a character that stood at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. He was a heavenly deity. However, although heavenly deities were the peak powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms, there were far more than a single heavenly deity in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Also there were strong and weak ones. As for this heavenly deity, he once felt defeated because of a deity-level battle. He was unwilling to accept this. He wanted to recultivate and comprehend an even stronger heavenly Tao. Hence, he entered his own cycle of reincarnation and cultivated anew until his master, the myriad incarnations' immortal king, died in his embrace. Only then did his memories awaken once more. He knew who he was and what he wanted to pursue in the future. Upon seeing Hua Taishu achieving his Tao, many world overlords had looks of envy on their faces. When would they be able to comprehend their own heavenly Taos and step into the true legendary realm? The peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. This time around, it was an opportunity. They had to grab hold of it, or no one knew what would happen to them in the future. In the blink of an eye, many years passed. In the boundless starry space, on the constellations above, another expert achieved his Tao. When he achieved his Tao, the constellation he was on grew brighter, resembling a unique constellation in the starry space. Before comprehending the Tao, tens of years were nothing. To experts who could reach this place, 100 or 1,000 years was like a white steed flashing by in the blink of an eye. But in the external world of the immortal realms, the commotion caused by the heaven vault was still ongoing. This storm has already lasted for tens of years. It was rumored that right now many peak experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms have all headed to the heaven vault. Countless world overlords of the supreme ancient immortal realms have all arrived at the boundless sea region outside the heaven vault. Right now, this sea region could even be buried by the sea of people. Countless experts from the various regions of the supreme ancient immortal realms all rushed here. They received news after news that during these years, there were already several peak characters who achieved their Taos and became heavenly deities. However, there was something strange. It was said that these people who achieved their Taos were all experts who had entered the legendary place of the Tiandao Sacred Academy. Many people sighed in admiration. Seems like the legendary place of the Tiandao Sacred Academy truly lived up to its name. It helped those supreme geniuses to build a solid foundation, allowing them to comprehend their Taos here in the starry space. In the azure mystic immortal realms, in the Emperor Palace, Qing'er, Qingcheng, Yiqianyu, Princess Kitamura, even the experts from the Battle Saint tribe, the myriad Devil Islands, Chongqing the Great, the Southern Phoenix Matriarch and the others were all waiting. They all knew about the events that happened in the supreme ancient immortal realms, and knew that the heaven vault had opened. During these years, they didn't take the initiative to disturb Qin Wentian. From the news transmitted back from the Qingqing realm, there were already quite a few experts who managed to verify their Taos. They knew of Qin Wentian's desire to become a heavenly deity. They were filled with anticipation that Qin Wentian would also be able to obtain his Tao. For countless days and nights, Mo Qingqing and Qing'er would stare at the starry sky, thinking about the person they missed. Was he currently in the boundless starry sky? Time continued to flow. Qin Wentian no longer stayed on a single constellation. During these years, he traveled to many constellations, comprehending different types of energy and different types of heavenly Taos. Every time he had free time, he would send a message to Qingqing and Qing'er, telling them not to worry about him. Today, Qin Wentian once again returned to a sword-type constellation. He released his sword-type astral soul, an astral soul that originated from the 8th heavenly layer. Constellations by themselves contain heavenly Taos. In that case, astral souls originate from constellations. Astral souls by themselves should be the Tao. Qin Wentian silently mused. The insights I gained in the past weren't wrong. His body floated in the air above the constellation. His dazzling astral soul was repelling the astral energy in the surroundings. Astral souls could form the Tao, but they were also the carriers of the great Tao. The Tao of astral souls wasn't limited to a single type of energy. It was able to fuse and comprehend the various types of energy. For example, the Tao might radiating from this sword-type constellation was in the form of a sword. However, its Tao didn't only contain a single type of energy. That was the source origin of the Tao. It was merely the foundation of the heavenly Tao. Each constellation was a world, and a world naturally wouldn't only contain a single type of energy. There would be all types of energy. It was just that one of them was the main body. Right now, Qin Wentian was using the sword as a breakthrough point. The various types of energy entered his body, fusing into his sword-type astral soul. Gradually, a terrifying sword domain manifested around the constellation, repelling all external energy. This was because the Tao he comprehended was different from the Tao of the constellation. The sword domain of his astral soul grew increasingly resplendent, radiating light in all directions as it expanded outwards. This sword domain contained a terrifying amount of energy. Finally, an extremely resplendent beam of light radiated outwards. Qin Wentian's astral soul transformed into a heavenly sword that floated in the air. This entire space seemed to have transformed into a sword domain world. Within this sword domain world, sword intent flowed unceasingly, as though it could penetrate through space and time. Is this the Tao? Qin Wentian mumbled. In an instant, boundless sword intent gushed forth from the constellation. With the ancient sword floating behind him as the center, the boundless sword intent slowly circulated. At this moment, this constellation became extremely dazzling, attracting the attention of everyone in the world. Someone broke through again? Many people had strange expressions on their faces as they stared at this constellation. They actually didn't know who this person was. Could there really be such a powerful hidden heaven chosen that existed in this world? Qin Zheng and his wife were currently cultivating on a constellation. At this moment, the gazes of the two of them also turned in the direction of the constellation. The eyes of Qin Zheng's wife flickered with a terrifying golden light as she stared at the constellation Qin Wentian was on. At the instant her eyes landed on Qin Wentian, the golden light seemed to be restoring Qin Wentian's countenance. That disguise was directly stripped away, and Qin Wentian's disguise was being torn apart bit by bit. When she saw his countenance clearly, a sense of familiarity appeared in her heart. This sense of familiarity caused her beautiful eyes to flash with a dazzling light. Qin Wentian's countenance resembled him. Not only that, his countenance had been altered. His son has actually comprehended to such a level? Qin Zheng's wife spoke. Qin Zheng's eyes flickered as he stared at Qin Wentian. Are you saying that it's him? There's no mistake. A smile could be seen on his wife's face. However, the smile on her beautiful face gave off a feeling of coldness. Chapter 1885. Qin Zheng stared in the direction of Qin Wentian as coldness flashed in his eyes. He knew what sort of ability his wife cultivated. Since he was certain that the person she was looking for was Qin Wentian, there shouldn't be any mistake. Let's go. Qin Zheng spoke. After that he stepped out, speeding towards the constellation where Qin Wentian was at. The speed of the two of them was incomparably fast. In the field of vision, there was basically no way to see their afterimages. They vanished the moment they appeared, speeding through the starry space. And at this moment, Qin Wentian was still in a state of cultivation. His foundation hadn't stabilized yet, and he was still sensing his own strength. He didn't notice that there were two silhouettes moving closer and closer to him. Danger! At this moment, Qin Zheng's wife transmitted a voice transmission to Qin Dangtian. Qin Dangtian replied, "Mother, what's wrong? The son of your clan uncle has appeared. He is none other than the person who is currently breaking through. Head there immediately." Qin Zheng's wife spoke. On another constellation, Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Wentian as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Qin Wentian actually disguised his appearance? Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Nick Heng was about to become his wife. He could ignore the matters between her and Qin Wentian. But Qin Wentian must not be left alive. With a flash of his silhouette, he also flew towards the constellation where Qin Wentian was at. Other than them, there was another person who had been paying attention to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's grandfather, Luo Shenchuan. When he came here, he contacted Qin Wentian and knew that the person who was currently breaking through was none other than his grandson. Luo Shenchuan felt gratified in his heart. His grandson's cultivation talent had already surpassed his parents'. But at this moment, he saw two figures walking through the starry space. These two figures were incomparably tiny and insignificant in the starry space. However, the vision of heavenly deities was also extremely powerful. When he saw them walking towards Qin Wentian, his eyes flashed with a dazzling light. He immediately took out his messaging crystal and spoke. Wentian, Qin Zheng and his wife have discovered you. They are currently rushing towards your direction. Qin Wentian, who was in the midst of cultivation, abruptly opened his eyes and halted his cultivation. His silhouette flickered as he left with no hesitation, directly stepping out of the constellation and flying towards the starry space. His speed was also incomparably fast. The direction he was heading towards was the ancient Heaven Vault pathway. If he used the ancient Heaven Vault pathway, he would be able to take a shortcut and would be able to reach a very high altitude. When his silhouette vanished from the constellation no longer reflected his silhouette. The beautiful eyes of Qin Zheng and his wife flickered as they halted their steps. He left. Qin Zheng frowned. Although they saw Qin Wentian's silhouette earlier, that was merely through the projection of the constellation. In truth, the distance between them and Qin Wentian was extremely far. The distance between constellations in the starry space was equivalent to crossing an entire world. Even with the cultivation bases of Qin Zheng and his wife, it wasn't something they could reach in a short period of time. He's there. At this moment, Qin Zheng's wife turned her gaze towards the ancient Heaven Vault pathway and found Qin Wentian's silhouette. The two of them instantly changed their direction and sped towards the ancient Heaven Vault pathway. Qin Wentian actually wanted to fly towards the 9 heavenly layers. Seems like he discovered them and wanted to hide in the boundless starry space. Luo Shenchuan was also rushing over there. Qin Wentian traversed numerous astral rivers. It was like he wanted to reach the end of the 9 heavenly layers. Vile spawn, why are you fleeing in such a hurry after seeing your uncle? Qin Zheng roared into the air. His voice seemed to contain a magical power, penetrating through the 9 heavenly layers and permeating the boundless space, ringing out in Qin Wentian's ears. Qin Wentian's eyes were cold. As expected, he was exposed. He didn't expect that even with his disguising technique, he still couldn't escape from his opponent's eyes. Qin Zheng, back then you were merely someone who was defeated by my father. You relied on the strength of the Qin clan to defeat my father, but now, you are actually the Qin clan leader? What a joke! Qin Wentian spoke, his voice like thunder. The eyes of many who heard his voice flashed as expressions of interest appeared on their faces. After that, some people saw Qin Wentian's countenance gradually changing, returning to his original appearance. So it's him. Those who were acquainted with Qin Wentian had strange looks on their faces. They didn't expect that the person who broke through was him, the son of Qin Yuanfeng of the Qin clan. But now that he was discovered by Qin Zheng, most probably he would be in trouble. Qin Zheng, the Qin clan leader, has been in charge of the Qin clan for many years. His cultivation base was already unfathomably deep. Even his son Qin Dangtian was known as Heaven's Son. Ordinary heavenly deities wouldn't be a match for him at all. In addition, Qin Wentian just broke through and hasn't completely stepped through that gate. He hasn't even condensed his final astral soul yet. Luo Shenchuan is rushing over. Someone saw Luo Shenchuan, the former clan leader of the Luoshan clan. Seems like things were about to get lively. Right now, experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms gathered here. It was unknown how many people there were. They were all scattered around the constellations that were closer to the ancient path. When they saw the situation on the ancient path, all of them had expressions of interest on their faces. In fact, there were even some who sped towards the ancient path, preparing to watch the show. Vile spawn, your father was a traitor in the past. Who would have thought that he would give birth to a vile spawn like you? Don't flee anymore, it's useless. Uncle won't kill you. Qin Zheng continued. Qin Wentian continued madly rushing forward. At the same time, he already arrived at the highest point of the 9 heavenly layers. He passed through numerous astral rivers, and arrived at the peak of the 9 heavenly layers, wanting to reach the end. An extremely terrifying pressure enveloped boring down on Qin Wentian, causing him to feel his footsteps becoming heavy. In the 9 heavenly layers, when one tried to sense it, the higher one went, the greater the pressure would be. The truth was indeed so. The higher the altitude, the more terrifying the energy contained within the constellations. In the past, there were heavenly deities who tried to ascend, but they didn't dare to casually enter. At the end of the ancient path, there was a stone monument with the words God's Extinction Path engraved on it. God's extinction. It was like if one continued forward, it would be a dead end. The ancient path was severed and ahead of him was a boundless universe. In that universe, Qin Wentian actually saw a few corpses floating there, causing him to feel a chill in his heart. Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he decisively left the ancient path, heading towards the starry space at the side. This place was already the 9th heavenly layer. Even with his current cultivation base, he already felt extremely uncomfortable here. It was like he was being suppressed. There weren't many constellations here, and the distance between each constellation was very far apart. However, the energy contained within each constellation was extremely terrifying. If I break through in the heaven vault, I can directly walk to the end of the ancient path and condense a connection with the constellations in the 9 heavenly layers. A thought flashed through Qin Wentian's mind, but he didn't think too much about it. Qin Zheng was already catching up to him. "Vile spawn, you still dare to flee?" Qin Zheng's voice rang out. It felt like his voice was right behind Qin Wentian. He stood in the starry space and turned his head back, staring at the two silhouettes that were getting closer and closer. If he continued to flee, it was already meaningless. The two of them soared through the starry space. Qin Wentian's gaze couldn't catch their silhouettes, and soon, they arrived before Qin Wentian, standing in the starry space. Qin Wentian surveyed the two before him. He had met them before, a very long time ago. In the memories of his father, the tiny astral being, the man was Qin Zheng and the woman was none other than the heaven chosen of the Qin clan whom his father had a crush on when he was young. After that, she married Qin Zheng and now, she was already the mother of the Qin clan. She was indeed very beautiful, exuding a noble aura. Her thin red lips had a faint smile on them, but it caused Qin Wentian to feel a sense of coldness. As expected, "He resembles your father. Is he still alive?" the woman asked. Right now, the Qin clan speculated that Qin Yuanfeng might still be alive. Naturally, he is doing very well. You guys will meet him sooner or later and slaughter your way to the Qin clan once again. Qin Wentian was very calm when facing the two of them. "Is that so? I heard your name is Wentian. Has your father mentioned me to you before?" The woman still had a smile on her face. My father once said that when he was young his eyesight wasn't good and he treated you guys as his family and friends. In addition, he once felt that you were beautiful, but after he met my mother, he felt that he was blind back then." Qin Wentian smiled. "Your father wouldn't say that. He isn't as sharp-tongued as you." The woman smiled confidently, like she understood Qin Yuanfeng very well. "Vile creature, since you are a junior, I don't wish to act against you. Destroy your own cultivation base, and follow me back to the Qin clan. Since you have the bloodline of my Qin clan, I won't kill you." Qin Zheng stood with his hands behind his back as he spoke arrogantly. He had such confidence. He was Qin Zheng, the clan leader of the Qin clan. "Qin Zheng also said the same thing to you." Qin Wentian laughed. Qin Zheng wanted him to destroy his own cultivation base and return to the Qin clan? How ridiculous. If that was the case, he might as well die in battle. How did Qin Zheng die? Qin Zheng thought of Qin Zheng as he coldly asked. "I killed him," Qin Wentian replied. "If not, who else do you think I killed him?" "Hee. At that time when you were a world overlord, who else participated in the killing of Qin Zheng?" Qin Zheng continued to interrogate. "If you don't believe me, why bother asking?" Qin Wentian calmly spoke. "How stubborn. Since you are unwilling to cripple your own cultivation base, I can only act." Qin Zheng calmly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, a fearsome heavenly might bore down, enveloping this entire starry space. Qin Wentian only felt himself being enveloped by the absolute power of the great Tao. A supreme formation seemed to have appeared in this space as divine Tao light flashed. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt his body being imprisoned. There seemed to be boundless divine Tao light piercing through the starry space, locking down everything. Qin Wentian's body, his feet, his surroundings were all filled with divine Tao light that intersected with one another, resembling a divine formation. Qin Wentian was in the center of the divine Tao light. He couldn't even move his body. Qinzheng, he had another title in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Ever since he became the clan leader of the Qin clan, very few people mentioned his name. Qinzheng's name already had enough weight. His other title was none other than the Divine Punishment Heavenly Deity. Qinzheng waved his finger, and in an instant, the divine formation formed from divine Tao light slashed down divine punishment, wanting to split apart the heavens and earth, annihilating all existences as it slashed towards Qin Wentian. He controlled the might of this attack and wouldn't directly kill Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's life was still useful. Chapter 1886. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the starry space. This stretch of the sky transformed into a world of divine punishment. There seemed to be a divine formation appearing in the starry space. Beneath his feet, resplendent divine light could be seen. This entire space was enveloped by the divine formation, causing his body to be unable to move at all. Clearly, this wasn't something that could be accomplished with just a single source origin energy. This was Qinzheng's Tao, the heavenly Tao of divine punishment. Qinzheng naturally wasn't proficient in just a single source origin energy. However, he was known as the heavenly god of divine punishment. Clearly, the heavenly Tao of divine punishment was his main source of energy, his strongest technique. When you have a divine Tao that transcends all other sources of energy, the other sources of energy naturally weren't that important. They would only be used as support to aid your comprehension, allowing your main Tao to grow stronger, or allowing you to comprehend stronger divine Taos. At this moment, Qinzheng was like an invincible god-king character, lofty and lofty, peering down at this world. He wanted Qin Wentian to suffer divine punishment. The might of the heavenly Tao of divine punishment radiated forth, causing the starry space to be extremely dazzling. Even from extremely far away, one could clearly see the intensity of the light. Many experts in the starry space inclined their heads and glanced over. They instantly understood that a deity-level battle was currently erupting over there. Qinzheng actually acted. Who is he dealing with? Some heavenly deities who knew of Qinzheng's methods silently mused when they saw the situation. After that, they stepped out and sped towards the ancient heaven vault pathway. However, all of this had nothing to do with Qin Wentian. Right now, the only thing he could do was to block Qinzheng's attack. Qin Wentian stretched out his hands. In an instant, a sword domain appeared around him as his sword-type astral soul appeared behind him. Right now, Qin Wentian's astral soul seemed to have transformed into the heavenly Tao, containing boundless sword intent. Each sword within it seemed to contain Tao might as well. Within the sword domain, ancient sword characters also appeared, each of them containing Tao energy. Qinzheng had an expression of interest on his face when he saw this scene. He could clearly sense the Tao energy Qin Wentian had comprehended. Not bad at all. Qin Wentian could actually faintly sense the power of spacetime within his sword domain. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Divine punishment descended, wanting to split apart the heavens and earth. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's sword domain transformed into a river of swords that flowed in reverse, gushing towards the heavenly Tao energy of divine punishment. The light of divine punishment descended upon the sword domain, wanting to shatter everything in its path. However, within the sword domain, even time and space seemed to be frozen. But even so, it wasn't able to completely obstruct the light of divine punishment. The supreme divine Tao light wanted to break through all restraints, wanting to tear apart Qin Wentian's sword Tao. However, the sword river flowed frenziedly, gushing forth endlessly. Although it didn't completely stop the divine punishment, it still managed to obstruct its advance. The light of divine punishment slowed down, as though its might was unceasingly being weakened. Finally, the river of swords transformed into thousands of sword characters that revolved frenziedly. When the divine punishment was about to descend upon Qin Wentian, everything suddenly vanished. The light of divine punishment vanished. The sword river vanished as well. It was like they had vanished into thin air. Almost at the same time, in a faraway place, a heaven-shaking explosion rang out from a constellation. Two different beams of light shot out, blasting apart the constellation as meteors rained down from the sky. These meteors were as big as cities, one could see how powerful their attacks were. If this wasn't in the starry space but on the surface of the supreme ancient immortal realms, deity-level battles, if one didn't intentionally control their attacks, it was possible that an entire city would instantly be turned into dust. This sword Dao. The eyes of those who saw this scene all gleamed with sharpness. Was this someone who had just comprehended a heavenly Dao? This sword Dao actually contained the Dao of spacetime within. In an instant, the attacks were all teleported away. In addition, they also saw the divine punishment energy being weakened. Such a sword Dao could already be considered a spacetime sword Dao. Qin Wentian was just at the initial stage, and he already had such power. Most probably, it would be even more terrifying in the future. However, Qin Zheng most probably wouldn't give him such a chance. He would definitely bring him to the Qin clan. What a pity. Qin Wentian comprehended the Dao, and was at the first step of the heavenly divinity realm. One couldn't say that he had boundless potential. He was a true godlike existence. However, he encountered Qin Zheng. He was Qin Yuanfeng's son, but his opponent was the powerful Qin clan of the Heaven region, Qin Yuanfeng's former clan. He's somewhat similar to your father. Qin Zheng's wife calmly spoke. Qin Zheng didn't say anything. With a wave of his hand, the divine formation grew even more resplendent, unceasingly extending up into the starry space. The entire starry space was enveloped by the divine formation, as terrifying beams of divine punishment light directly locked onto Qin Wentian. This time around, several beams of divine punishment light manifested, causing the starry space to be filled with boundless divine light. Boundless Dao. Most probably this was the best way to describe this scene. It was too dazzling and resplendent. Qin Zheng, don't you feel any shame for bullying a junior like this? At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out, shaking the heavens and earth. After that, a beam of light descended as a figure suddenly appeared before Qin Wentian. At the instant he appeared, numerous gigantic space beasts appeared in this starry space. All of them were incomparably large. These space beasts fought directly. There were chaos beasts that shattered constellations with their roars. There were heaven-lifting beasts that crushed divine formations. There were world-shocking devil apes that lifted their palms and blasted out the divine punishment energy. Luotian clan, Luotian Chuan. The eyes of the experts who were spectating from afar flashed when they saw who appeared. They naturally heard of the commotion that happened in the desolate region. It was impossible for them to not know about it. Luotian Chuan, Qin Wentian's maternal grandfather, appeared at the right time. The Qin clan leader, Qin Zheng, and the former clan leader of the Luotian clan, Luotian Chuan, were now facing off against each other. The divine punishment energy was blocked, but the divine formation was still as resplendent as ever. Qin Zheng calmly stared at Luotian Chuan. Luotian Chuan, although you can be considered my elder, you are already old. Back then, you shouldn't have indulged your daughter, causing the decline of the Luotian clan. Now you still dare to obstruct me? Although I objected to Qin Yuanfeng being together with my daughter back then, I have no choice but to say this. Qin Zheng, as the clan leader of the Qin clan, you are inferior to Qin Yuanfeng. Luotian Chuan calmly replied. Qin Zheng wasn't angered. In this world, the winner is the king and the loser is the villain. No matter how outstanding Qin Yuanfeng was, or if he was more outstanding than him, Qin Zheng was born to be the king of the Qin clan. This has never changed. In the end, he also became the leader of the Qin clan. As for Qin Yuanfeng, he was merely dragging out an ignoble existence. It doesn't matter even if you are one more person. Qin Zheng calmly spoke, as though he was prepared to deal with both Luotian Chuan and Qin Wentian at the same time. To Qin Zheng, Qin Wentian merely just comprehended the Dao and could be destroyed with a wave of his hand. At his level of cultivation, an additional Qin Wentian wouldn't affect him at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the divine formation shone again. Behind him, an incomparably resplendent light appeared. It was as if he was carrying a world on his back. The light of divine punishment shot out from that world, wanting to descend into the mortal world and destroy all living things. Wentian, leave. Luotian Chuan spoke to Qin Wentian. He also understood that if Qin Zheng fought against him, an additional Qin Wentian wouldn't affect him much. For example, If Qin Wentian fought against someone at the same level as him, other than courting death, what use would a world overlord be? After all, Qin Wentian just comprehended the great Tao. No matter how high his talent was, it was impossible for him to shake an existence like Qin Zheng. The Qin clan leader was one of the few characters with the most authority in the heaven region. Where can he escape to? At this moment, another voice rang out. Qin Dangtian walked over from afar and arrived beside Qin Zheng. He stared at Luo Shenchuan and Qin Wentian. His expression was calm when he looked at Qin Wentian, like he basically didn't place Qin Wentian in his eyes at all. Qin Wentian was merely the son of a traitor. If it wasn't for the rumors about him and Nick Hang in the world of reincarnation, Qin Wentian wouldn't even have any weight in his heart. Dang you came at the right time. The beautiful eyes of Qin Zheng's wife flashed with a faint smile. Qin Dangtian came at the right time. Qin Wentian was the son of her and Qin Zheng. He was the most suitable person to deal with Qin Wentian. Father, mother, leave the traitor son of my Qin clan to me. Qin Dangtian casually spoke, his tone calm as though Qin Wentian was insignificant. Right. Qin Zheng calmly nodded. Although it wasn't a problem for him to deal with Qin Wentian while dealing with Luo Shenchuan, since his son Qin Dangtian was here, he would naturally leave Qin Wentian to him to deal with. Qin Wentian stared at Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian. Pride could be seen in his eyes as he coldly laughed. Traitor son. The Qin clan isn't worthy of my father's existence. Qin Zheng, back then you were defeated by my father. Your son is also inferior to me. Back then in Tiandao Sacred Academy, you once said that I don't understand the heavenly Tao and have no qualifications to speak. However, you are known as Heaven's Son. How many years did you spend to comprehend the Tao? Qin Wentian calmly spoke. Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Wentian as he calmly spoke. What do you want to say? Up until now, I've cultivated for less than 1,000 years. What about you? Qin Wentian calmly spoke. His words caused the hearts of many to tremble. Comprehending the great Tao in less than 1,000 years? What sort of cultivation speed and talent was this? Even Qin Zheng and his wife felt their hearts trembling. However, their expressions were as calm as ever. So what if Qin Yuanfeng's talent was high? Wasn't Qin Yuanfeng strong? What was his ending? Qin Dangtian didn't reply. The time he spent comprehending the great Tao was indeed much longer compared to Qin Wentian. You were born in the Qin clan and had countless cultivation resources. As for me, I grew up in a particle world. You proclaim yourself to be Heaven's Son and are proud of it. But before me, what qualifications do you have to be Heaven's Son? Qin Wentian mocked. Your father wouldn't be as talkative as you. He actually used the time he spent cultivating to compare the two of us. Qin Zheng's wife coldly laughed. Dang capture him and let him understand what it means to be Heaven's Son. Right. Qin Dangtian nodded. He lifted his feet and walked towards Qin Wentian, only to see Qin Wentian moving to the side. Since Qin Dangtian wanted to fight, he would naturally accompany him. He also wanted to know how strong Qin Dangtian, who was known as Heaven's Son, was exactly. Chapter 1887. In the starry space, Luo Shenchuan faced against Qin Zheng. Qin Dangtian and Qin Wentian, this pair of fated enemies, stood opposite each other. Just like what Luo Shenyu said, they were destined to be enemies since birth. More and more experts rushed over here. They stared at the figures before them, feeling that things were extremely interesting. In fact, there was even some anticipation in their hearts. There was no need to say much about the battle between Qin Zheng and Luo Shenchuan. The battle between Qin Zheng's son and Qin Yuanfeng's son also caused many people to be filled with anticipation. Back then, there were many rumors about the battle between Qin Zheng and Qin Yuanfeng. Many people said that Qin Yuanfeng's talent and strength were above Qin Zheng's, but ultimately, Qin Yuanfeng died. Many years later, Qin Zheng ascended and became the Qin clan leader. That legend of the Qin clan ended with Qin Zheng's complete victory. But what everyone didn't expect was that the grudge between the Qin clan and Qin Yuanfeng still continued. Maybe Qin Yuanfeng didn't die. His son grew up in a particle world, but he came all the way to the supreme ancient immortal realms, and even comprehended the Tao after 1,000 years. Qin Dangtian stared at the young man before him. His gaze was still filled with incomparable arrogance, disregarding everything. Did he comprehend the Tao? So what of it? Just like what you have said. Back then in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, I once told you that you don't understand the heavenly Taos. Now you think you understand? However, I will tell you that you still don't. Qin Dongtian's arrogance was incomparable. He was the heaven's son, and was destined to be extraordinary. He had comprehended the heavenly Taos for many years, and was the heavenly Taos itself. His Tao wasn't limited to just one. I hope your strength is as impressive as what you have shown me. If not, wouldn't my words be filled with mockery? Qin Wen calmly replied. However, he didn't dare to underestimate his opponent in his heart. After cultivating for so long, he naturally understood that the higher one's cultivation base was, the greater the disparity would be. Back then when he broke through to the World Overlord realm, he already understood that the disparity between World Overlords wasn't just a little bit. The moment he broke through to the World Overlord realm, he was already extraordinary. Ordinary World Overlords couldn't even withstand a single strike from him. But at that time, he was nothing in front of hegemonic level World Overlords. Now that he had reached the heavenly deity realm, even if he was in the same realm, the difference in comprehension would only be greater than in the World Overlord realm. Qin Dangtian was the heaven's son. After he broke through to the heavenly deity realm, he defeated the Skyorder heavenly deity in his first battle. From this, one could see his talent. Right now, he would only grow stronger. When he was in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, ancient words revolved around him. Each word contained a type of heavenly Tao energy, causing the three heavenly deities of the Tiandao Sacred Academy to sigh in admiration. After that, Qin Dangtian was directly snatched away by an unknown heavenly hand from the Tiandao Sacred Academy. He was humiliated, and after he returned, he went into closed-door seclusion to cultivate. It was rumored that after he exited his seclusion, he was even stronger than before. This was Qin Dangtian. However, he had just comprehended the Sword Tao. From this, one could very well imagine the pressure he had to face now. However, he was still fearless. This battle was unavoidable. Qin Dangtian laughed arrogantly and didn't say anything more. Only a battle could prove everything. His opponent had just comprehended the Tao, and he already wanted to fight against him? Was he dreaming? The ancient words revolved around him. Each of them contained an incomparably vast amount of heavenly Tao energy. His father, Qin Zheng, mainly cultivated the divine punishment heavenly Tao. However, Qin Dangtian was different. He had his own Tao, a completely different Tao. The path he was walking on was different. He cultivated many Taos at the same time, and was known as the Heaven's Son. At this moment, many halos revolved around Qin Dangtian. He was like an undefeatable divinity, able to look down on everything in this world. He stepped out and pointed a finger at Qin Wentian. In an instant, an ancient character slashed out with extreme speed, slamming into Qin Wentian. At this moment, the boundlessly vast space around Qin Wentian was enveloped by a suppressive might that could bind the heavens and earth. It was like the myriad of laws in the world wanted to lock him in place. That was the word lock, wanting to seal time and space, locking Qin Wentian in place. Qin Wentian's heart was as calm as still water. He stared at the incoming word lock. A sword domain appeared behind him, and after that, a similar ancient word manifested. The word sword abruptly shot out, traversing through space, leaving behind a resplendent beam of sword light in the starry space. The two ancient words clashed together, causing a resplendent light to erupt. The terrifying light illuminated the starry space. A casual clash between two heavenly deities would definitely result in a shocking amount of power. Not too bad. Qin Dangtian calmly spoke. Abruptly, many ancient word lock floated behind him. In an instant, the starry space seemed to be locked in place. The might it exuded was overwhelming to the extreme. However, I really want to see if your cultivation base can allow me to unleash 10% of my strength. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, many ancient words erupted forth at the same time, shooting towards the space Qin Wentian was in. In an instant, the power of the great Tao enveloped the entire starry space. A gigantic lock, rune directly appeared in the space, locking onto Qin Wentian. The countless ancient words floated around the gigantic rune, transforming into a heaven-locking force. Numerous illusory runes directly slammed into Qin Wentian, causing him to feel that he couldn't move at all. After that, even more ancient words erupted forth from Qin Wentian. It was almost impossible to see what these words were, but they were about to descend upon Qin Wentian, penetrating through everything as a fearsome destructive might brood within. A boundless sword domain enveloped Qin Wentian, enveloping him who was locked down by the lock rune. This sword domain seemed to drag his body as it spun around. After that, stellar transposition appeared and Qin Wentian's body seemed to vanish into thin air, breaking the lock of the rune. In the next instant, Qin Wentian's figure suddenly appeared before Qin Wentian as he slashed out with his sword. The moment this sword appeared, time and space froze. Only the sword could devour everything. Qin Dangtian stretched out his hand and blasted out a palm imprint. In an instant, the ancient word halo transformed into a resplendent screen of light, blocking before him. The space-time sword might slashed onto the screen, tearing it apart. However, the sword might dissipated as well. However, this was merely the beginning. Sword light flashed. A boundless sword domain manifested around Qin Dangtian, locking him within. A beam of sword light descended from the heavens, cleaving apart time and space, wanting to destroy everything. Before this sword domain dissipated, another beam of sword light erupted forth from another direction. Everyone only saw that in an instant, Qin Dangtian's surroundings had already transformed into a world of swords. In that world, there was only the Tao of swords. Qin Dangtian inclined his head and stared at the boundless sword might gushing towards him. His gaze was as calm as ever. He blasted out with both hands as numerous ancient words erupted forth. Numerous ancient words blasted into his surroundings. At this moment, a divine wall appeared around Qin Dangtian, impervious to all Daos. This divine wall contained countless ancient words. No matter how the sword domain tried to tear it apart, it had no way to break through this layer of defense. Qin Dangtian stood within it, feeling incomparably calm. Continue. Qin Dangtian calmly spoke. It was as though Qin Wentian's attack was insignificant to him, not worthy of a mention. Wentian, be careful. His divine wall can absorb the energy of your attacks and counterattack. Luotian Chuan called out to Qin Wentian. Back then when Luotian Yu fought against Qin Dangtian, it was precisely because he underestimated Qin Dangtian's Tao energy that he suffered a backlash. After that, he was defeated and his cultivation base was crippled. Right now, Qin Wentian was fighting against Qin Dangtian. Although Luotian Chuan was fighting against Qin Zheng, he was still concerned about Qin Wentian's battle. He couldn't be at ease. Although Qin Wentian's talent was at the peak, it was too difficult for him to win against Qin Dangtian now. Heaven's son, he was already strong enough when he just broke through to the heavenly deity realm. Let alone now, Qin Wentian still needed to completely step into the heavenly deity realm and perfect his Tao before he would have a chance to fight against Qin Dangtian. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed when he heard Luotian Chuan's voice. After that, a mocking smile appeared on Qin Dangtian's face. So what if he reminded Qin Wentian? He blasted out with his palm, and in an instant, the countless ancient characters on the divine wall suddenly erupted forth with a dazzling light. In an instant, the sword energy that Qin Wentian blasted out earlier suddenly blasted out together with the ancient characters on the divine wall, counterattacking back at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian not only had to endure Qin Dangtian's attack, he also had to endure the many attacks he unleashed earlier. The stronger his attacks were, the stronger the backlash would be. Time and space seemed to have stopped, locking down his body. The destructive light blasted forth and at this instant, Qin Wentian truly felt a sense of danger. Sword intent gushed forth from his eyes. At the moment of imminent peril, the might of his Tao actually shot out from his eyes. His sword intent distorted time and space, causing the countless attacks to miss him, whistling past him. Making use of this time, Qin Wentian instantly retreated far away, standing in the starry space. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a strange light. He felt that his strength was much stronger compared to Qin Wentian, and his cultivation base was deeper. He who had comprehended for many years in the heavenly deity realm, How could he be compared to Qin Wentian, who had just comprehended the Tao? Qin Wentian had many layers of Tao arts. All of the ancient characters contained Tao arts within them. This divine wall was a combination of offense and defense, and it could catch Qin Wentian off guard. He initially thought that such an attack would be sufficient to destroy Qin Wentian, causing him to lose his combat strength. Who would have thought that Qin Wentian would actually be able to evade it? This caused him to feel somewhat surprised. Back then, your uncle Luo Xinyu was crippled by this attack. Qin Dangtian spoke to Qin Wentian, his words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to gleam with coldness. A heavenly deity, a lofty divinity, actually had his cultivation crippled. I won't play with you anymore. Fighting against you isn't fun at all. You are not qualified yet. Qin Dangtian continued speaking. An even stronger might gushed forth from him. It was like earlier, he was merely playing around with Qin Wentian. Only now did he prepare to take this battle seriously and end it. Qin Wentian stared ahead. The demon sword was unsheathed and landed in his hand. In an instant, it transformed into a gigantic sword that soared through the starry space. In an instant, the space around Qin Wentian changed. He dragged the gigantic sword as he moved forward, and it felt like the starry space was about to be slashed apart. Even heavenly deities would be able to sense how terrifying this aura was. Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Wentian's actions. His expression was as calm as ever, like the wind and the clouds. The divine might radiating from him was still growing stronger. The current Qin Wentian wanted to challenge him? What a fool's dream. Chapter 1888. Qin Wentian dragged the gigantic sword as he released his spacetime sword Dao. His entire body circulated with the sword intent of spacetime, as he released his sword domain astral soul. The astral light from his astral soul frenziedly flowed into the gigantic sword, and at the same time, countless swords appeared around him. The starry space transformed into a world of swords. Qin Dangtian was still unmoved. Even if Qin Wentian, who had just comprehended the great Tao, could erupt forth with strength that was shocking, so what of it? The ending wouldn't be any different. Because the person Qin Wentian was facing was him. Let alone the current Qin Wentian. Even if Qin Wentian stabilized his cultivation base and grew stronger, what could he do to Qin Dangtian? Let me show you my heavenly Tao astral soul. I'll show you what a true Tao is. Qin Dangtian arrogantly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, he released his astral soul. The Tao of heavenly deities. The Tao was infused into his astral soul. Astral souls were the foundation of the Tao. In the past, Qin Wentian had already comprehended this point. At that time, he unleashed his Tao might using his astral soul. Hence, both Luo Xinyu and Luo Xinchuan knew that Qin Wentian has already touched upon the threshold of the heavenly deity Tao. The astral soul Qin Dangtian released was extremely resplendent. It was an astral soul from the 9th heavenly layer. This was the astral soul he condensed after he became a heavenly deity. This was also the final astral soul he condensed. This astral soul didn't have any form, and was different from the vast majority of astral souls. It was a screen of light that was extremely resplendent. Within it, countless ancient characters could be seen. These characters seemed to originate from the primordial era, and didn't exist in the present. They kept on changing, transforming into new characters. The resplendent light from the astral soul enveloped the starry space. These ancient characters exuded the will of a monarch, transcending everything. At this moment, Qin Dangtian was like the true heaven's son, destined by fate. He was a heaven's chosen by the heavens. It's very rare for me to release my 9th astral soul, the absolute beginning astral soul. You should feel honored. I'll let you experience the might of the absolute beginning Tao. Qin Dangtian's tone was filled with incomparable arrogance. Back then, when Qin Wentian participated in the convention of the Myriad Realms, he had once met a hegemonic level expert with the title of the Absolute Beginning Overlord. But in truth, the Absolute Beginning Overlord wasn't worthy of this title. Right now, Qin Dangtian's 9th astral soul was the Absolute Beginning astral soul, comprehending the Absolute Tao. Many heavenly deities stared at Qin Dangtian. They all knew the meaning behind the word, Absolute Beginning. Since Qin Dangtian dared to use this name, it meant that he was confident and tyrannical. All of them wanted to see how strong Qin Dangtian's absolute beginning heavenly Tao was. Qin Zheng's wife had a faint smile on her face when she saw Qin Dangtian releasing his astral soul. She knew that after her son was humiliated in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, he returned to the Qin clan and entered closed-door seclusion. It was only after he came out did he have some accomplishments in the absolute beginning heavenly Tao. Now this was the first time he displayed this ability before the world. She knew how strong her son was. Let alone Qin Wentian. Even if it was some famous heavenly deities in the supreme ancient immortal realms, her son would be able to defeat them. I want him alive. Qin Zheng spoke to Qin Dangtian. He was worried that Qin Dangtian's attacks would be too ferocious, and he might accidentally kill Qin Wentian. If that was the case, his plans would be disrupted. Right now, Qin Wentian mustn't die yet. There was still some use in keeping him alive. Luo Shenchuan was somewhat worried. However, he was being held back by Qin Zheng, and had no time to be distracted. In the starry space, there were many experts spectating. The lofty heavenly deities all had expressions of interest on their faces as they watched this deity-level battle. Even for them, it was extremely rare to see a battle between heavenly deities. After all, in the boundlessly vast supreme ancient immortal realms, there were only so many heavenly deities. No one believed in Qin Wentian. Everyone was waiting for Heaven's Son to unleash his brilliance again. The disparity between the two of them was simply too great. Even if Qin Wentian had shocking talent, how could he, who had just comprehended the Tao, fight against Heaven's Son? It was already extremely rare for him to be able to block a few of Qin Dangtian's earlier attacks. Since you have comprehended the sword Tao, in that case, I will use my sword to defeat you. I also want to see how powerful the absolute beginning sword Tao is. Qin Dangtian spoke again. He wanted to use the sword Tao to deal with Qin Wentian. From this, one could very well imagine how proud and confident he was. Naturally, if he truly comprehended the true intent of absolute beginning, and his comprehension was very deep, no matter what Tao it was, he would be able to erupt forth with heaven-shaking might. Qin Dangtian stretched out his hand, guiding the sword into the absolute beginning sword Tao. After that he stabbed out with his finger, "Go." As the sound of his voice faded, boundless sword light manifested from the absolute beginning sword Tao. At this moment, the entire world transformed into a world of swords. It was like a sword Tao was being brewed in this world. Everyone inclined their heads and stared at the starry space, staring at Qin Dangtian's absolute beginning heavenly Tao. The boundless sword light seemed to be born from the primordial chaos, transforming frenziedly, growing stronger and stronger. After that, it erupted forth and shot towards Qin Wentian. This boundless sword light seemed to grow stronger with every step it took, transforming and evolving on its own. Qin Wentian's body was locked down by the sword intent. The boundless sword light directly traversed the space, locking him in place. Qin Wentian stared at Qin Dangtian's Tao. The absolute beginning heavenly Tao, the sword intent, was actually evolving on its own. Not only that, it continued to grow stronger and stronger. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath. An incomparably resplendent screen of space-time sword light appeared around him, distorting space, causing the descending sword light to be swept away by the chaotic flow of space-time. But this wasn't the end. The fearsomeness of the absolute beginning sword Tao was that it could evolve on its own, growing stronger unceasingly, absorbing the power of the 10,000 Taos in heaven and earth to create an even stronger Tao art. Waves of terrifying sword intent enveloped the screen of sword light around Qin Wentian, distorting space, causing Qin Wentian's expression to stiffen. The absolute beginning heavenly Tao was borrowing his Tao to evolve an even stronger sword Tao, fusing his Tao art within. In the screen of light Qin Dangtian released, the sword Tao grew stronger and stronger, blasting towards Qin Wentian, wanting to transcend space-time and was boundless. How powerful! Everyone sighed in admiration. To be able to comprehend such a heavenly Tao, Qin Dangtian was able to grow stronger as he fought against stronger opponents. His comprehension of the heavenly Tao had already reached such a tyrannical level. How terrifying would his future be? Qin Wentian was in the center of the storm. He stared at the absolute beginning heavenly Tao, feeling a little disappointed. Was this the strength of Heaven's Son, his destined enemy? Although he was proud in his heart and had extremely high talent, he couldn't help but to admit how strong Qin Dangtian was when facing against Heaven's Son. At the very least, Qin Dangtian, who had been in the heavenly deity realm for so many years, in terms of his comprehension of the heavenly Tao, it was true that Qin Dangtian was much stronger than him. After all, he had just comprehended his Tao not long ago. In terms of astral souls, he also didn't have an advantage. For the first time, he didn't have an advantage because he hadn't condensed his final astral soul. However, what Qin Dangtian released was his ultimate astral soul, the ninth astral soul, the absolute beginning astral soul. He used the absolute beginning astral soul to comprehend the Tao and infused his Tao into it, forming the absolute beginning Tao. Qin Dangtian was very arrogant, but since he was able to obtain the title of Heaven's Son, even if Qin Wentian didn't want to admit it, Qin Dangtian was truly very powerful. Not everyone in the supreme ancient immortal realms was blind. Not everyone could be called Heaven's Son. Right now, in the supreme ancient immortal realms, there was only one such person. But even if Qin Dangtian was very strong, so strong that it surpassed his imagination, Qin Wentian's battle intent still surged. He could be defeated, but he mustn't lose his battle intent and show cowardice. This was his destined enemy, an opponent he had to defeat no matter what. As long as he didn't die, he would definitely defeat Qin Dangtian in the future. I've been in closed-door seclusion for many years, comprehending the absolute beginning Tao. As the first person to face me, you should feel honored. Qin Dangtian calmly spoke. His sword intent grew even stronger, wanting to slash apart everything. But at this instant Qin Wentian moved, advancing forward with no hesitation. He slashed out with the sword in his hand. This was his battle intent, his determination. All of this seemed to transcend space-time. Ignoring the distance between them and directly slashing towards Qin Dangtian's body. This was the space-time sword Tao. Although it was only at the initial level, it still radiated a radiance that belonged to it. Qin Dangtian suddenly felt a sense of danger. After that, he sensed that the absolute beginning sword Tao seemed to transcend space-time, and was slashing towards his head. His expression changed, and with a shrill howl, the absolute beginning sword Tao erupted forth with boundless transformations, transforming into the strongest attack, similarly transcending space-time and slashing towards Qin Wentian's body. Also, the absolute beginning sword Tao was endless. There was no end to it. A dazzling beam of light that seemed capable of splitting the heavens and earth radiated forth. After that, the spectators only saw the two of them separating from each other. But in that instant of collision, everyone could feel how terrifying it was. A bloody line appeared on Qin Dangtian's body. He stretched out his finger and touched the bloodstain as his expression grew extremely unsightly. He was actually injured. Qin Wentian was in an even more miserable state. His body felt as though it was being cleaved apart. The absolute beginning sword Tao manifested unceasingly, wanting to sever his body, but by relying on his heaven-defying undying energy, he still managed to stand there. However, only he himself understood how badly injured his body was. Even his soul was heavily injured. He actually managed to injure Qin Dangtian. Everyone felt some shock in their hearts. Qin Wentian had just comprehended a heavenly Tao. Although he was heavily injured, he still managed to injure Heaven's Son. This was simply a miracle. Right now, Heaven's Son was much stronger compared to the time when he defeated Luo Xinyu. His absolute beginning heavenly Tao could be said to be terrifying. In the future, if his absolute beginning heavenly Tao improved by another step, it would definitely become a peak-level heavenly Tao. Capture him. At this moment, a few heavenly deities with terrifying auras flew towards Qin Wentian. They were actually preparing to directly attack Qin Wentian. These people were all heavenly deities of the Qin clan. The one who spoke was an old man from the Qin clan. He wanted to capture Qin Wentian alive. Go! Luo Xinchuan shouted. He and Qin Zheng clashed again. The two of them pulled apart, and he took the opportunity to shout at Qin Wentian. If he landed in the hands of the Qin clan, the consequences would be unimaginable. Most probably, no matter how heaven-defying Qin Wentian's talent was, he wouldn't have any chance at all. The Qin clan would never give him a chance. Qin Wentian's heart trembled when he heard his grandfather's roar. After that, his silhouette flashed as he soared through the air. Leave. How should he leave? There was basically no path he could take. When he stepped out, he actually flew towards the god extinction ground. At the end of the ancient heaven vault pathway. Chapter 1889. At the end of the heaven vault pathway, there was a stone tablet with the words God's Extinction Path. Up ahead, in the boundless universe, there were no stars but numerous ancient corpses could be seen floating there. It was unknown how many years have passed since they died, drifting about in the boundless universe. Over there was no aura of life at all. That place was the God's Extinction Path. God's Extinction Path, even for deities, they would still die if they entered. That was truly a path of death. But the Qin Wentian right now was already facing a path of death. If he had to choose between death and being captured by the Qin clan, he would rather choose death. Being captured by the Qin clan would be even more painful than death. In addition, there might still be a ray of hope for survival in the God's Extinction Path. Hence, when Qin Wentian arrived here and stared at the stone tablet, he didn't hesitate and stepped out. He walked towards the end of the ancient path, stepping into that desolate universe with no aura of life at all. With so many heavenly deities chasing after him, he had no other choice. Behind him, the heavenly deities of the Qin clan rushed over. Qin Dangtian also walked over and stared ahead. Their expressions were cold, hesitating if they should continue forward or not. The God's Extinction Path, the ancient corpses floating in the universe, the heavy and oppressive aura, the desolate and boundless space, all of these caused them to feel a sense of danger. However, Qin Wentian was currently walking towards that desolate and oppressive space. Now should they continue to capture him? In fact, even Qin Zheng gave up his battle against Luo Shenchuan and came here. To him, Qin Wentian was much more important compared to Luo Shenchuan. Although he had some grudges with the Luoshan clan, the Qin clan had always been the victors. The Luoshan clan had never shaken the Qin clan before. Hence, he didn't have a strong killing intent towards Luo Shenchuan. What a ruthless fellow. Many heavenly deities silently mused in their hearts when they saw Qin Wentian walking towards the God's Extinction Path. He would rather enter the God's Extinction Path than allow the Qin clan to capture him. Where are you going? Qin Dangtian spoke. After that, he took a step out and also entered the end of the 9 heavenly layers, heading towards the desolate land. Denger. Qin Zheng's wife called out. Her beautiful eyes flashed as she stared at the figure moving forward. Her heart was filled with nervousness. Even for someone as powerful as her, she would still feel fear and respect towards the unknown. After all, this was the God's Extinction Path. At the end of the heaven vault, there were ancient heavenly deity corpses floating there. Who could guarantee that they would be able to return safely? However, Qin Dangtian didn't hesitate and stepped out. He was actually injured by Qin Wentian. This was simply unreasonable. He was fighting against Qin Wentian. How could he allow Qin Wentian to escape? Even if he escaped into the God's Extinction Path, he wouldn't allow it. He wanted him alive. He was the heaven's son and he had his own pride. Hence, he didn't hesitate to enter the God's Extinction Path. Chase. Qin Zheng's wife spoke. Her son entered the God's Extinction Path. At the end of the heaven vault, she naturally had to chase after him. Her silhouette flashed as she entered the desolate space. Qin Zheng's eyes flashed as he also followed after her. Not only was he chasing after them, he also had a trace of ambition in his heart, wanting to explore the end of the ancient path. Luo Shenchuan's expression was extremely unsightly to behold. When he saw Qin Zheng and the others entering, he also followed after them. Have all of you gone mad? At the back, the Qiankuan sect leader stared at those experts who entered the God's Extinction Path. What would happen if all the deities died in there, unable to exit? Could it be that you don't want to see the greatest secret of this heaven vault? The 9 heavens mystical maiden calmly spoke. She was like a celestial maiden from the 9 heavenly layers, incomparably pure and holy. She stood in the air, causing even heavenly deities to fall into her charms. It's still you who understands me the most. The Qianquan sect leader laughed. After that, he turned behind and shouted, "If I can't come out, Lin Xiao will be my successor in the future." His voice shook the heavens and earth, drifting extremely far away. As the sound of his voice faded, he took a step forward. Who doesn't know how to be crazy? Naturally, he didn't do this because he wanted to chase after someone. It was purely because he was curious about the secrets of the Heaven Vault. After cultivating to his current level, he could already be considered to be standing at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Only a rare few could stand above him. But now, it was extremely difficult for him to take another step forward. He knew that those unknown existences in the supreme ancient immortal realms have long become terrifying characters. How could he not want to step into that realm? The Heaven Vault was connected to the 9 heavenly layers. The end of the Heaven Vault was known as the God's Extinction Path. How could he not be curious about it? The 9 heavens mystical maiden smiled. She floated forward like a celestial maiden from the 9 heavenly layers, heading towards the end of the Heaven Vault. Even the 9 heavens mystical maiden is heading there? Many people sighed in their hearts. The number 1 celestial maiden in the 9 heavenly layers, a supreme beauty, someone who exuded boundless magnificence. Even she didn't hesitate to enter the God's Extinction Path. As men, why wouldn't they dare? Hence, more and more experts entered. Most probably, since the ancient times until now, there had never been so many experts who entered the God's Extinction Path at the same time. The people in the Heaven Vault were all shocked. If something happened to them, the entire supreme ancient immortal realms would surely be shaken. At the instant Qin Wentian stepped into the God's Extinction Path, he could already sense how terrifying this place was. There was no astral energy here. It was like no experts could borrow strength from this place. There was only desolation and desolation. Those ancient corpses seemed to be right in front of him, but they also seemed to be very, very far away. He had no way to reach them. He could see the people behind him chasing after him. As he continued upwards, a formless energy flowed in this desolate universe. When Qin Wentian stepped into it, his body actually vanished from sight. The people behind him were all swept into it as well, vanishing from the vision of everyone on the ancient Heaven Vault path. Where are they? The gazes of the experts on the Heaven Vault path froze. They personally witnessed the figures disappearing one after another, completely vanishing before their eyes. Regardless of vision or divine sense, they could no longer sense their figures. There wasn't even a trace of their auras left. Qin Wentian naturally sensed the flowing energy. In addition, he was extremely sensitive to it because he had comprehended this energy before. It was the power of spacetime. The him at this moment was actually shuttling through spacetime. He had no idea where he was heading to. In addition, the laws of spacetime here seemed to be completely chaotic, not under his control. He could only drift along with it. He had no other choice. Not only Qin Wentian entered this chaotic spacetime flow, the people behind him also entered, drifting through spacetime together. God's Extinction Path. Could it be that those who disappeared in the past were all separated by the chaotic spacetime flow? It was unknown where they went to. In this chaotic spacetime flow, could they still return to where they came from? Although they were all heavenly deities with incomparably tough wills, it was inevitable for them to feel fear. Fear towards the unknown, fear of not being able to control their fates. At this moment, they saw a tangible object. The space here was no longer desolate. Instead, numerous corridors appeared, intersecting with each other. No one knew which corridor led to where. At this moment, Qin Wentian frowned. He could sense that the tiny astral being was moving again, radiating a faint glow. This made him feel somewhat strange. When he entered the Heaven Vault, the tiny astral being had already moved once. This was already the second time it reacted. Such a situation had never happened before. After walking for a very long time, a silhouette actually appeared in the middle of the long corridor. This silhouette was an old man, but his eyes shone with a piercing light as he stared at Qin Wentian. However, right now, Qin Wentian was still fleeing and had no time to linger. With a flash of his silhouette, the people behind him arrived. One of them asked, "Sir, who might you be?" The old man stared at the newcomers and asked, "Where did you guys come from?" "Heaven Vault," Qin replied. "Heaven Vault, Heaven Vault. Why must you do this?" The old man let out a long sigh and stepped out. "Old sir, you have yet to tell us your name. Could it be that you are also from the supreme ancient immortal realms?" Someone asked. "This old man is called Jiuqing." The old man calmly spoke. After that, his figure gradually vanished. When they heard his name, the expressions of some heavenly deities changed as shock could be seen on their faces. Taoist Jiuqing. They exchanged mutual glances. An extremely ancient and powerful heavenly deity. There were records of him in the ancient records. Back then, he once dominated the supreme ancient immortal realms and roamed about alone, rarely suffering defeat. It was unknown how terrifying he was. Everyone in the world thought that he had died, but in reality, he was trapped in the god's extinction path at the end of the Heaven Vault. Qin Wentian casually walked through the corridor. He saw a second person. This person was incomparably suave and had long hair. He sat in the middle of the corridor and was currently playing a flute. A melodious melody drifted out from the flute, extremely pleasing to the ears. What a handsome silhouette. A feeling of familiarity appeared in Qin Wentian's heart, as though they had met before. When that person saw Qin Wentian, he stopped playing the flute. His handsome eyes stared at Qin Wentian as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Qin Wentian walked past him. That person suddenly called out, "Who is Qin Yuanfeng to you?" Qin Wentian's body trembled violently. He halted and turned his head, staring at that handsome figure as shock filled his heart. "You are acquainted with my father?" Qin Wentian asked. "So it is Yuanfeng's son." That person smiled, his gaze grew warmer. But at this moment, Qin Dangtian and the others arrived. Qin Dangtian took the lead and stared at Qin Wentian. "Even if you walk to the end of the heavens, you won't be able to escape." The god's extinction path was the end of the heavens. From a certain perspective, they had indeed walked to the end of the heavens. "Who are you?" That handsome figure stared at Qin Dangtian as he asked. "Who are you? Why are you acquainted with the traitor of my Qin clan, Qin Yuanfeng?" Qin Dangtian asked after hearing the conversation between him and Qin Wentian earlier. Qin Zheng and his wife also rushed over. When they stared at that handsome figure, both father and son could sense a sense of familiarity from him. It was like they had met before. Chu Mo, the handsome figure, calmly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the eyes of Qin Zheng and his son narrowed as they froze there. Chu Mo. These two words had an extraordinary meaning to Qin Zheng and his son, because the number one beauty of the heaven region, goddess Nikhang, whom Qin Dangtian was going to marry, was none other than his daughter. Chapter 1890. Qin Dangtian glanced at Chu Mo. Chu Mo was incomparably handsome and extremely carefree. No wonder he could give birth to the number one beauty of the heaven region, goddess Nikhang. Both father and daughter had some similarities, causing him to feel a sense of familiarity. Nephew Dangtian pays his respects to uncle. Qin Dangtian clasped his hands. If Nikhang knew that uncle is still alive, she would surely be very happy. Nikhang. Chu Mo's eyes trembled. How was his daughter doing outside? "You are acquainted with my daughter?" Chu Mo stared at Qin Dangtian as he asked. "Brother Chu." Qin Zheng stepped out and spoke to Chu Mo. "I've long heard of Brother Chu's name, but sadly, I didn't have the chance to get to know you. I didn't expect that I would be able to meet Brother Chu here. Most probably, this is fate. Before I entered the Heaven Vault, I paid a visit to Uncle Chu and arranged the marriage between my son and Nikhang." Marriage? Chu Mo's body trembled. His daughter actually had a marriage arranged? "Who are you?" Chu Mo asked. "The current clan leader of the Qin clan, Qin Zheng. This is my wife and my son, Qin Dangtian." Qin Zheng replied. Chu Mo's gaze landed on Qin Dangtian again. He naturally wasn't unfamiliar with the Qin clan. On the contrary, he was very familiar with the Qin clan. He became famous earlier and was older than Qin Zheng. Hence, he had never interacted with Qin Zheng before. However, he was acquainted with Qin Zheng's father, Qin Ding, and Qin Tiangang. He was also acquainted with Qin Yuanfeng. Earlier you said that your Qin clan betrayed Qin Yuanfeng? Chu Mo stared at Qin Dangtian as he asked. Uncle Chu, Qin Yuanfeng once betrayed our Qin clan, and has long since become a traitor. Many years ago, he was killed by the Qin clan. As for this young man, he is none other than Qin Wentian, one of his descendants. Qin Dangtian pointed to Qin Wentian. It was precisely because he fled here that we chased him all the way here. To think that we would meet Uncle Chu here. Most probably this is fate's arrangement. From what I know, Yuanfeng is a heroic character. Why would he betray the Qin clan? Chu Mo didn't believe it. He glanced at Qin Wentian. He naturally understood that because their standpoints were different, the words of a single person couldn't be trusted. Wentian greets Uncle Chu. Qin Wentian was also very polite. At this moment, he certainly knew who the handsome man in front of him was. Moreover, from his tone, it could be inferred that he knew his father, and their relationship should be good. The people of the Qin clan are shameless to the extreme. It's true that my father betrayed the Qin clan, but that was because the Qin clan had let my father down. My father was indomitable throughout his life, and initially wanted to live in seclusion with my mother to cultivate. However, Qin Zheng, that despicable villain, actually found a way to deal with him. Even after he was defeated, he still used all sorts of methods. In the end, my father killed his way into the Qin clan, and was stripped of everything he had. Qin Wentian coldly spoke. Chu Mo froze as a look of sorrow flashed in his eyes. Yuanfeng actually died? A bunch of nonsense. You are the son of a traitor of my Qin clan. You will naturally speak for him. Uncle, don't believe him. After speaking, he stepped out and continued walking towards Qin Wentian. Even if you flee to the ends of this world, I will still capture you and bring you back to the Qin clan. Yuanfeng actually died as well? In the end, he didn't manage to escape his fate. Chu Mo mumbled. His tone was filled with sorrow. Also, the experts here stared at Chu Mo. When they heard this word, a strange look appeared on their faces. Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian carefully stared at Chu Mo. Qin Zheng then asked, Brother Chu, why are you so sad because of a traitor? What kind of place is the god's extinction path at the end of the heaven vault? Brother Chu, why don't you come with me and barge our way out? Barge our way out. Chu Mo's handsome gaze turned to Qin Zheng. I hope you guys will be lucky and be able to exit the god's extinction path. As for me, I have no chance at all. Uncle, why are you saying this? Qin Dangtian asked. However, when he spoke, his tone was still as calm as ever, with no emotions at all. Even though the person before him was Nichang's father, the person he liked to be indifferent to was goddess Nikhang. It didn't matter much if Nichang's father appeared. However, Chu Mo was acquainted with Qin Yuanfeng and their relationship wasn't bad. In here, everything you see, everyone might not be from the same space-time. They might come from a space-time in the past. I am one of them. Chu Mo slowly spoke. In the space-time of the future, I've already died on the god's extinction path. The space-time of the past. The hearts of everyone trembled. The place they entered was actually a space-time of the past. Chu Mo had actually died. Right now, he no longer existed, he only existed in the space-time of the past. As for them, they had arrived at a space-time in the past of the god's extinction path. This was simply unbelievable. Every expert here felt their hearts trembling. How did Brother Chu die? Qin Zheng asked again. His eyes were filled with heat. He wasn't concerned about Chu Mo's life or death. Rather, he wanted to know how Chu Mo died. He wanted to know what Chu Mo had experienced. Only then would he be able to unravel the secrets of the god's extinction path. Chu Mo calmly glanced at Qin Zheng before turning to Qin Dangtian. He suddenly felt a sense of unease. He didn't like this father and son duo very much so. Since you addressed me as Brother Chu, can you promise me to spare him? After all, I'm acquainted with Yuanfeng. Now that you guys have entered this place, your life and death are unknown. Why do you still want to fight? Chu Mo suddenly spoke. Some of his words came from the bottom of his heart. Naturally, some of it was because he wanted to probe Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian. Brother Chu, this young man is the son of the traitor Qin Yuanfeng. Our Qin clan has to capture him no matter what. I hope Brother Chu can understand. Qin Zheng rejected. Uncle, I will definitely walk out of the god's extinction path. As for Nick Hang, you don't have to worry. I will take good care of her on your behalf. In the future, her future will definitely be higher than everyone else. Qin Dangtian arrogantly spoke. Chu Mo stared at this father and son duo. They seem to be very similar, as expected of father and son. If you can survive this, help me tell my father and Nick Hang. Tell them that I, Chu Mo, do not agree to this marriage. Chu Mo transmitted his voice to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's expression trembled, before he nodded lightly. If he could survive this, he would definitely pass this message to Nick Hang. From his perspective, he also didn't wish for goddess Nick Hang to marry Qin Dangtian. Chu Mo saw Qin Wentian nodding. The flute in his hand was placed in front of his mouth again as he slowly played it. The melody of the flute was melodious, filled with hints of longing and sorrow. Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian stared at him. Upon seeing Chu Mo playing the flute, he no longer bothered about them. Qin Dangtian turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian again as he stepped out. Do you still want to flee? As he spoke, the experts of the Qin clan stepped out, completely sealing off all the paths of escape for Qin Wentian. Luo Shenchuan also stepped out, appearing before Qin Wentian. He didn't expect that even after walking all the way to the god's extinction path, he still couldn't escape from the pursuit of the Qin clan? The Qin clan actually spared no expense, chasing him all the way to the end of the 9 heavenly layers. Grandfather, you don't have to care about me. Qin Wentian sighed. Luo Shenchuan stared at him. His expression was incomparably calm as he spoke. You are my grandson. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He only felt an incomparable warmth in his heart. This was his grandfather, the father of his mother. Since this is the case, grandfather, let's fight. Qin Wentian calmly smiled as his aura gushed forth. Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian both coldly laughed. What was the point of struggling before death? Just as their auras erupted forth, the melody of the flute continued, transforming into the might of the great Tao. The sound waves spread out in all directions. At this moment, time and space seemed to be distorting as the space-time corridor changed. The melody of the flute seemed to have created a passageway, allowing everyone to pass through it. It was unknown which space-time they were heading to. The experts stared at Chu Mo. Chu Mo seemed so near yet so far away from them at the same time. He was so handsome, he still sat there quietly playing the flute. It was like nothing in the world would be able to shake his heart. What is he doing? Someone asked. No one knew, but they had a feeling similar to when they passed through space-time earlier. They knew that the melody of the flute contained the might of the great Tao, allowing them to pass through space-time. No one knew what Chu Mo wanted to do. He only continued to play the flute, causing everyone to wander through the endless space-time. In different space-time they saw different people. All of them were in the heaven vault. It was unknown if they were trapped or had already died. He wants to send us to a certain space-time. An expert spoke, understanding Chu Mo's intentions. But what they didn't understand was which space-time Chu Mo wanted to send them to exactly. Finally, when they saw a figure appearing in a certain space-time, the melody of Chu Mo's flute suddenly calmed down. Space-time no longer flowed. His figure grew further and further away, gradually vanishing from the vision of everyone. Another figure appeared in his place. This figure stood there, resembling a towering ancient mountain, yet also like a tall pine tree. His long hair was as black as ink, fluttering in the wind. The contours of his face were incomparably clear. At the instant he saw this figure, Qin Wentian's heart involuntarily trembled. Not only for him. When they saw this figure, the gazes of Qin Zheng, Luo Shenchuan, and the others all froze, staring at the person who appeared before them. The eyes of this person were so deep and terrifying. That pair of eyes seemed to contain 1,000,000,000,000 constellations. He stared at Qin Wentian. It was like in his eyes, there was only Qin Wentian. Their gazes intersected. It felt like they were separated by samsara, separated by boundless space-time. However, Chu Mo's flute melody caused time and space to merge, allowing them to meet each other. Qin Dangtian stared at the imposing young man before him as he frowned. He also sensed something. He turned his gaze to his father, only to see his father staring intently at the young man. As for the young man, he didn't even glance at him. My name is Qin Wentian, Qin Yuanfeng's son. At this moment, Qin Wentian suddenly spoke, revealing his name. That young man continued staring at him. After that he opened his mouth and slowly spoke, My name is Qin Tiangang. Chapter 1891. My name is Qin Tiangang. This voice rang out in the ears of everyone, causing the hearts of many to tremble involuntarily. Qin Tiangang of the Qin clan, Qin Zheng's elder clan uncle. He was from the same generation as Qin Zheng's father, Qin Ding. In that era, Qin Tiangang was someone who could shake the heavens and earth. Now he appeared before their eyes, meeting with them in a different space-time. It seemed like Chu Mo sent them into a different space-time, allowing them to walk through it. Only after they came to this space-time and met Qin Tiangang did Chu Mo stop. It seemed like he had the intention to help Qin Wentian. Qin Tiangang was Qin Wentian's grandfather. Qin Wentian stared at the figure before him. His name was Qin Tiangang. He didn't expect that he would have a chance to meet his grandfather. At the end of the heaven vault, in the chaotic space-time of the god's extinction path. Grandpa! Qin Wentian called out. A smile appeared on Qin Tiangong's face. He stepped out and walked towards Qin Wentian. Both his hands patted Qin Wentian's shoulders. I didn't expect us 3 generations to be here. Maybe this is fate. Father has indeed come here before. Qin Wentian silently mused. Qin Tiangang surveyed Qin Wentian from a close distance as he continued. Good, just like Yuanfeng back then. Luo Shenchuan stared at the figure before him, feeling very shocked in his heart. He didn't expect that he would actually be able to meet Qin Tiangang here. Most probably, Qin Zheng and his family didn't expect this, right? Chu Mo's goddess, Nick Hang, was already engaged to Qin Wentian. However, Chu Mo was acquainted with Qin Tiangang and Qin Yuanfeng. He wanted Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian to spare Qin Wentian, but they didn't agree. Clearly, Chu Mo didn't like Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian. His flute music brought everyone to another space-time, to Qin Tiangang. At this moment, Qin Tiangong's entire body suddenly turned cold. He stared at Qin Wentian and asked, How is your father? Back then, my father was killed by the Qin clan, stripped of everything from his body. Even now, it is unknown whether he is still alive or dead. Qin Wentian replied. Qin Tiangong's aura grew even colder. He turned and stared at Qin Zheng and the other heavenly deities of the Qin clan. His gaze landed on a heavenly deity of the Qin clan. This heavenly deity was an elder. Back then when he was still in the Qin clan, he was already an elder of the Qin clan. His name was Qin Mo, Astral Dipper. I didn't think I would be able to meet you here. Qin Mo's heart was also filled with shock. The aura radiating from Qin Tiangang was as cold as ever. He glanced at everyone from the Qin clan as he coldly asked, Qin clan, did you kill my son? Astral Dipper, after you were trapped in the heaven vault, many things happened in the Qin clan. You don't understand. The Qin clan has always been seriously nurturing Yuanfeng, hoping that he would be able to inherit your legacy. However, Yuanfeng's personality was too rebellious. In fact, he even dared to act against an elder of the Qin clan. For the sake of a woman, he spared no expense and even betrayed the Qin clan, slaughtering his way into the Qin clan. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no other choice, the Qin clan wouldn't have acted against him. Qin Mo spoke. His way of addressing Qin Yuanfeng had already changed from traitor to Yuanfeng. Earlier in another space-time, I heard everything you guys said. Qin Tiangang coldly spoke. Qin Mo, do you think that I, Qin Tiangang, am so easy to fool? How much have I, Qin Tiangang, sacrificed for the Qin clan? Yet the Qin clan actually dared to kill my son? Who gave the order? Qin Tiangong's entire body radiated a violent aura. So what if he's killed? Traitors naturally have to be killed. What can your son do? Qin Dangtian coldly spoke. Even when facing Qin Tiangang, his tone was still filled with arrogance. How could a heavenly deity of their Qin clan lower his voice when facing someone who was rumored to have already died? Qin Ding's grandson. Qin Tiangang stared at Qin Dangtian. Do you know who you are talking to? Qin Dangtian coldly snorted. Qin Zheng spoke. Uncle, even now, father often talks about you. Back then when uncle barged into the heaven vault, all the traces of life you left behind vanished. The entire Qin clan was very sad. So after I died, the Qin clan dared to kill my son? Was it your father Qin Ding who gave the order? Qin Tiangang stared at Qin Zheng. I'm also sad about Yuan Feng's matter. He and I were as close as brothers and grew up together. However, he betrayed the Qin clan and the Qin clan had no choice but to kill him. This was the will of the entire Qin clan. It wasn't an order from a single person. Qin Zheng spoke. Qin Zheng, can you be more shameless? Qin Wentian coldly spoke. Now why are you acting so differently? Back then, you stripped away my father's bloodline rune bones, and everything else from his body, using the cruelest methods to deal with my father. Is all this because you were as close as brothers or because you were forced to do so? Boom! An even more violent aura gushed forth from Qin Tiangang. He stared at Qin Wentian. The Qin clan once treated your father like this? Yes, in the memories my father left behind, I personally saw it. Qin Wentian nodded. Ha ha. Qin Tiangang laughed uproariously, causing time and space to tremble. What a good Qin clan. Is this how they treat my son? Qin Tiangang was enraged. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan exchanged mutual glances as they transmitted their voices. After that, they spread out, surrounding Qin Tiangang. They knew how powerful Qin Tiangang was back then. Now that they encountered each other in this space-time, they had no idea how strong the Qin Tiangang before them was. Tiangang, could it be that you also want to act against the Qin clan? Qin Mo coldly spoke. Clan. Qin Tiangang continued laughing. Is this still my clan? I, Qin Tiangang, actually have such a despicable clan? Since uncle also wants to betray the clan today, as the clan leader of the Qin clan, nephew can only offend you. Qin Zheng spoke. Let's act together. As the sound of his voice faded, all the heavenly deities of the Qin clan erupted forth with their own heavenly Tao energy. Divine punishment light flashed in this space-time, instantly enveloping Qin Tiangang. Boundless divine formation light enveloped Qin Tiangang, wanting to destroy him within the divine punishment. Qin Ding, your son became the clan leader of the Qin clan. As for your son, he was killed by the Qin clan. Good, my good clan. Qin Tiangang laughed maniacally, causing the heavens and earth to crumble. The divine formation trembled unstably, as though it would collapse at any moment. Qin Zheng released his astral souls as a screen of divine punishment appeared behind him, blotting out the sun. The divine formation shuddered violently, wanting to lock onto Qin Tiangang's body. Beams of divine punishment light descended from the sky, wanting to destroy everything. Qin Tiangang inclined his head. He opened his mouth and abruptly drew in a deep breath. In an instant, the beams of divine punishment light were swallowed into his mouth. The terrifying heavenly Tao energy of divine punishment was directly swallowed into the void, vanishing from sight. Qin clan? Very good. I, Qin Tiangang, have now become a traitor. The Qin clan leader wants to kill me as well. Qin Tiangang laughed loudly. But can you all kill me? As the sound of his voice faded, he stretched out his 5 fingers as a terrifying might erupted forth. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, causing space to tremble. Break. Qin Tiangang's fist blasted out, slamming into the divine formation. In an instant, the entire space seemed to be on the verge of destruction, shattering into pieces. The radiance of the divine formation was completely shattered. Qin Tiangang's fist blasted out, akin to a world-destroying fist, traversing through space, aiming for Qin Zheng. At this moment, Qin Dongtian's figure appeared. A divine wall appeared around him. His defense was unparalleled, able to absorb the power of the 10,000 laws and counterattack his opponent, creating a terrifying destructive might. Ding don't. Qin Dongtian's mother roared. Although Qin Dongtian's heavenly Tao was powerful, the person standing before him was none other than Qin Tiangang, the war god of the Qin clan. He has been missing for many years, but he was actually still alive in the god's extinction path. Only heaven knew how strong he was now. When Qin Ding and Qin Tiangang dominated the supreme ancient immortal realms, Xi and Qin Zheng were still young. At that time, Qin Tiangang and Qin Ding were already the legends of the Qin clan. Qin Tiangang, the war god of the Qin clan, could shatter the heavenly Tao with a single punch. However, it was already too late. Qin Tiangong's attack blasted out at the same time as her voice, directly smashing into the divine wall. The heavenly Tao crumbled as the divine wall shattered. That punch seemed to be able to penetrate through time itself. Qin Dongtian's body was directly flung through the air as he coughed out blood. His Tao was able to absorb the power of the Tao of others, but under that punch, it was directly shattered, causing him to be heavily injured. Dang er! Qin Zheng's wife screamed in shock. Her body flickered as she sped towards Qin Dangtian. At the same time, the heavenly deities of the Qin clan unleashed their heavenly Tao attacks, blasting towards Qin Tiangang. For a moment, this entire space felt like it was about to be destroyed. All living beings were slaughtered. An even more powerful divine formation radiated light, as boundless divine punishment descended from the skies. In the past, did you all bully my grandson like this as well? Qin Tiangong's battle intent towered up into the sky. He was like an ancient war god, allowing the attacks of countless Tao attacks to come at him. He stood there arrogantly, the light of divine punishment and destructive Tao attacks blasted over. The space-time around Qin Tiangang was in a state of chaos. When the boundless Tao attacks blasted into him, they were all swept away by the distortions in space-time. When the towering Tao attacks blasted into him, they were unable to move him at all. The divine punishment light was useless as well. The hearts of everyone who saw this scene trembled violently. How powerful! Was this the Qin clan's war god, Qin Tiangang, who once dominated the supreme ancient immortal realms? He alone could fight against all the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. Kill! Qin Tiangang roared. Dimensional light flashed, causing time and space to reverse. The boundless Tao attacks were reversed as the divine punishment light shot towards the Qin clan's heavenly deities. At the same time, he stretched out both his hands, traversing through space-time, arriving at the side of the Qin clan's heavenly deities. A thunderous boom rang out, causing time and space to tremble as the void collapsed. Several heavenly deities of the Qin clan were directly injured, coughing out blood as their countenances turned pale. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they stared at the legendary character of the Qin clan. This was the war god of their Qin clan, but now he actually acted against them. If he was still alive, how much of a joke would that be? Luo Shenchuan sighed in his heart when he saw this scene. Even Qin Zheng couldn't withstand a single strike from Qin Tiangang. His divine punishment energy was directly devoured by Qin Tiangang. Although he was shocked by Qin Tiangong's strength, Luo Shenchuan could also see the disparity between the Luoshan clan and the Qin clan. Qin Ding was someone who was equally famous as Qin Tiangang. Right now, on the path of a heavenly deity, what step has he reached? Chapter 1892. From afar, many heavenly deities who were spectating felt shock in their hearts. The Qin clan of the Heaven region. If Qin Tiangang didn't enter the Heaven Vault back then, the current Qin clan would surely be at its peak. Just Qin Tiangang alone was sufficient to contend against all heavenly deities. In addition, there was still his wife and his son, Qin Yuanfeng. Luckily, such a situation occurred. If not, if the Qin clan was too strong, the balance of power in the Heaven region would be unbalanced. Qin Tiangang had no time to care about what everyone was thinking. He stepped out and coldly spoke. Back then, which one of you participated in the killing of my son Yuanfeng? Tiangang, Yuanfeng betrayed the Qin clan back then. Now, if you act so heavily against someone from the Qin clan, will you be able to face the ancestors of the Qin clan? Qin Mo shouted loudly. He was also injured by Qin Tiangang and felt great shock in his heart. Compared to the Qin Tiangang who disappeared back then, the Qin Mo they met in the space-time of the god's extinction path was even more terrifying. Only when one reached the heavenly deity realm would they understand that this was a never-ending path. One could not imagine just how far one could reach in this realm. Was Qin Zheng strong? As the current clan leader of the Qin clan, he was naturally very powerful. Even among the heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms, he was at the peak. Leaving aside Qin Zheng, was Heaven's son Qin Dangtian strong? Of course he was. With his age and talent, he was definitely outstanding, rarely seen since ancient times, an unparalleled figure. Not long after he entered the heavenly deity realm, he crippled the Skyorder heavenly deity. But so what of it? Qin Zheng and the others were all powerful, but before Qin Tiangang, they couldn't even withstand a single strike. None of them could block him. This was the absolute disparity. From this, one could see how terrifying Qin Tiangang was now. It was unknown how strong he was compared to ancient god kings. The Qin clan treated Yuan Feng in such a manner, yet you still have the face to mention your ancestor to me? The Qin clan, are you worthy of me, Qin Tiangang? Qin Tiangang felt even more enraged when he heard the words of the other party. He stepped out with large strides, rushing towards a heavenly deity of the Qin clan. Traitor! That heavenly deity's expression was ice cold. Ha ha ha, I Qin Tiangang, have actually become a traitor. Qin Tiangang laughed maniacally, causing time and space to tremble. Qin Mo silently mused. After that, he heard Qin Tiangang coldly speaking. You killed my son and acted against my grandson. Since the Qin clan is heartless, I won't be righteous today. Qin Tiangang roared. That heavenly deity who spoke only felt the space around him trembling. After that, Qin Tiangang clenched his fist and punched out. This punch seemed to be able to penetrate through time and space, penetrating through everything. With a rumbling sound, that heavenly deity lowered his head and stared at his body. His chest was actually penetrated by a single punch. After that, the space around him exploded. He screamed in terror as he died in despair. The heavenly god had fallen. The experts of the Qin clan were in disbelief when they saw this scene. All of them felt their bodies turning incomparably cold. Qin Tiangang. Qin Zheng roared. He took out a treasure and after that, he sprayed a mouthful of blood on it. In an instant, a supreme divine weapon appeared before Qin Zheng. That was a treasured armor that blotted out the sun. It instantly enlarged as ancient runes flashed, radiating a supremely powerful Dao energy that instantly enveloped Qin Tiangang's body. After that, countless ancient runes shot towards Qin Tiangang. At this moment, numerous ancient figures walked out from the treasured armor. Each of the ancient runes contained a type of Dao energy. Myriad Law Armor. Qin Tiangang was enveloped by the power of the 10,000 runes. He stared at the treasured armor as his eyes gleamed with coldness. This was a supreme treasure of the Qin clan. Right now, Qin Zheng was actually using it to deal with him. The myriad law armor radiated an apocalyptic might that blotted out the sky as it shot towards Qin Tiangang. Rumble! A shocking might erupted from Qin Tiangang. He was like a supreme god of war in this world. Boundless attacks rained down on him, causing the space currents around him to explode. The myriad law armor spun. The Dao light it shot out grew stronger and stronger. Qin Tiangang couldn't bear to act against the figures that walked out. These figures were formed from the wills of the Qin clan's ancestors. The myriad law armor was created by the joint efforts of the Qin clan's ancestors, and was passed down from generation to generation. Each of the ancient runes on it was carved by the Dao of his ancestors. Kill! Qin Zheng roared. The light from the myriad law armor grew even more terrifying, covering the entire sky. The heavenly deities who were spectating from afar all hurriedly retreated. This was a world-destroying light. Luo Shenchuan walked towards Qin Wentian and spoke in a light voice, careful. Qin Tiangang took a step out, blocking Qin Wentian who was behind him. As for himself, he stood in the center of the storm as terrifying spatial tempests manifested around him. At this moment, countless figures of Qin Tiangang appeared in the sky. All of them lifted their fists at the same time, causing time and space to tremble. As the myriad law armor radiated light, Qin Tiangang let out a thunderous roar. The countless figures of Qin Tiangang blasted out space-time annihilation punches at the same time, clashing against the treasured light. For a period of time, the sky collapsed. It felt like this entire space was about to be destroyed. Go! Qin Zheng roared in a low voice. At the same time he attacked, the experts of the Qin clan retreated. When Qinzheng retreated into the distance, the myriad law armor transformed into a beam of light and followed after him. Seeing Qinzheng and the others leaving, Qin Tiangang didn't chase after them. If they could walk out of the god's extinction path alive, it could already be considered that they were very lucky. After retreating far away, the hearts of the various heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms were still trembling. This was the battle god of the Qin clan, Qin Tiangang. With his strength alone, he could fight against all the heavenly deities of the Qin clan, injuring them and killing one of them. Qinzheng took out the Qin clan's heaven-defying treasured armor, and used the momentum to flee. If they really fought head-on, those heavenly deities of the Qin clan most probably would have all died here forever. Qin Tiangang's strength has already reached another level. Turning around, Qin Tiangang walked towards Qin Wentian. Luo Shenchuan tactfully left, leaving some time for the grandfather and grandson pair. Qin Tiangang stared at Qin Wentian like he wanted to see his fill. He didn't expect that his grandson would already be so old, and had already comprehended the Tao, arriving at the end of the heaven vault. After that, Qin Tiangang glanced at the people in the distance. You guys leave this place first. I have something to say to my grandson. The eyes of everyone flashed as they departed respectively. Wentian, I didn't expect that Yuanfeng's son has already grown up. Good, this is truly very good. Qin Tiangang felt a myriad of emotions in his heart. After that, his gaze turned sharp as he stared at Qin Wentian. Is your father dead or alive now? Back then, everything my father had was stripped away by the Qin clan. But from what I know, he recultivated and only had me in his second life. Qin Wentian spoke. After that, he told Qin Tiangang everything he knew. After Qin Tiangang learned of this, he clenched his fists tightly as an uncontrollable rage gushed forth from him. He was like a terrifying primordial beast, causing fear to appear in the hearts of people. Qin clan. What a Qin clan. Qin Tiangang inclined his head and coldly spoke. Wentian, I'm afraid you will have to take revenge for this debt. Grandfather, now you. Qin Wentian stared at Qin Tiangang. I'm no longer with you. The me you see is merely the me from a certain spacetime in the past. Qin Tiangang smiled at Qin Wentian, as though he didn't mind at all. How can that be? Since I can see you, grandfather, it means that you are still alive in a certain spacetime. Since this is the case, there will definitely be a way. Qin Wentian learned the answer. It was actually what he didn't wish for the most. His grandfather Qin Tiangang was truly the same as Chu Mo, he had already died. This place was merely a spacetime in the past. Chu Mo intentionally sent them here, allowing them to meet each other. No matter how strong one's cultivation base is, it's impossible for one to revive from the dead. This god's extinction path is filled with chaotic spacetime. It's already very good that I can still exist in a certain spacetime. Also, I'm already very satisfied with being able to see you. Qin Tiangang didn't seem to mind at all. He had already fallen for so many years, but he still existed in the spacetime of the past. If the spacetime in this god's extinction path is reversed and we return to the past, wouldn't grandfather be able to survive? Qin Wentian spoke. When he participated in the convention of the myriad realms, he had once returned to the past in the time realm. The Time King was pursuing the supreme Tao of time, allowing him to transcend the past and the future. That is still the spacetime of the past. What's the difference between that and the current me? Qin Tiangang smiled. Qin Wentian started. After that he continued. In that case, if we can return to the spacetime where grandfather died and save grandfather, would it mean that we can change what happened in that spacetime and grandfather would be able to survive? Qin Wentian felt some reluctance. He met with his grandfather, the supreme expert Qin Tiangang, only to learn that his grandfather had already died. Silly child. Qin Tiangang patted Qin Wentian on his shoulder. Let's not talk about grandfather anymore. Let's talk about you. Why did you come to the heaven vault? Is it because you know that I died here? Qin Wentian nodded. After I learned that the heaven vault has opened, I recalled that grandfather came here before. Hence, I came here to roam the world and disguised my identity. However, I didn't expect that when I was breaking through, I would be seen through by the Qin clan. They chased me all the way here, and I didn't expect that Senior Chuemo would send me here to meet grandfather. Haha, that little brat Chuemo is too considerate. Qin Tiangang laughed. Grandfather, what sort of place is this exactly? I saw many heavenly deities trapped here. Are they from a certain space-time in the past? How did grandfather die? Qin Wentian asked. This god's extinction path was filled with locations. Maybe, grandfather might know some of them. God's extinction path. Back then, grandfather was greedy and that's why I ended up dying here. Qin Tiangang sighed. Wentian, did your father pass that thing to you? Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. He stared at Qin Tiangang and seemed to have thought of something. Grandfather, are you referring to the tiny astral being? Qin Tiangang started. After that he nodded. It's indeed in the form of a tiny astral being. In that case, it is already in your soul? Emitim, father passed it to me. After I entered the heaven vault, it had a reaction. Could it be that grandfather passed it to father? Qin Wentian was filled with curiosity. Yes. Our 3 generations all had the same encounter. Seems like fate has destined it to belong to my descendants. Qin Tiangong's eyes gleamed sharply. Since Qin Yuanfeng passed it to Wentian, there was no need to worry that Wentian wouldn't be able to exit this place. Chapter 1893. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. His grandfather was the first person to obtain the tiny astral being. In that case, he might know the secret of the tiny astral being. Grandfather, what is that thing exactly? Qin Wentian asked. The tiny astral being was extremely mysterious, but he had never truly unraveled its secrets before. Let me talk to you about the heaven vault first. Qin Tiangang spoke. Back then, when I conquered the heaven region, I followed the Qin clan and stood at the peak of the heaven region. My cultivation base was also strong enough and hence, I wanted to unravel the secrets of the supreme ancient immortal realms. I roamed many places and searched for records regarding the various secret realms of the supreme ancient immortal realms. I even managed to find some of the secret realms that were extremely hidden, and by chance, I learned that the heaven vault has a connection with the legendary existence of the ancient era. Hence, I decided to come to the heaven vault. Who is it? Qin Wentian asked. Being able to attract his grandfather here, that person must definitely be an extremely extraordinary existence. When the 8 regions were divided, the first overlord of the heaven region was none other than God King Shi. Qin Tiangang slowly spoke. I once investigated and found out that God King Shi's hometown is none other than Boundless City in the heaven region. It's located at the shore of the Boundless Sea. Grandfather, you suspect that the heaven vault has a connection with God King Shi? Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. The first overlord of the heaven region, God King Shi. How powerful of an existence was he exactly? When the supreme ancient immortal realms were divided into 8 regions, there was a god in each of the 8 regions who led the deities of the 8 regions, and were conferred the title of God King. Where were they now? I've always been thinking about where did those supreme existences of the ancient era go to? Most probably, they are all pursuing a supreme cultivation realm. I discovered that the heaven vault might have a connection with God King Shi and hence, I came here to explore the secrets of the heaven vault. I roamed the heaven vault, and as I ventured deeper, as well as many things that happened after that, I suddenly thought of something unbelievable. After you entered the heaven vault, did you pass through the 10 heavenly stone pillars? Qin Wentian nodded. When you entered the heaven vault, did you experience the blood sea bone boat before? Qin Tiangang asked again. Qin Wentian nodded again. Blood transforming into a sea, bones transforming into a boat. All sorts of evil thoughts, they are all evil thoughts in the heart. Have you ever imagined that the blood sea was truly formed from the blood of an expert? That bone boat was truly formed from the bones of an expert. Those distracting thoughts that cause people to feel fear and despair were all the distracting thoughts in the heart of that expert. All of these aren't lies, they are all real. Qin Tiangang spoke. Qin Wentian's heart trembled as he stared at Qin Tiangang in shock. Grandfather is saying that this heaven vault is the blood and bones of a supreme expert? This entire heaven vault is actually the inner world of a supreme expert? Qin Wentian felt that this was somewhat unbelievable. This conjecture was a little too audacious. Initially, I also didn't dare to think about it. In the end, I came to this God's extinction path. This God's extinction path contains many terrifying destructive Tao energies. Also, the space-time here seems to be chaotic, able to cause people to fall into a trap forever. It's like the countless memories in the mind of a person. Each memory is in a different space-time, containing different Tao energies. After I obtained the tiny astral being you spoke of, I was even more certain of my conjecture in my heart. That tiny astral being seemed to be formed from the soul of a supreme expert, controlling everything. Sadly, because I wanted to obtain it, I only had a single breath left. Relying on a strand of unwillingness, I forcefully separated it from my body. However, I didn't have the chance to exit the God's extinction path. I was unwilling to die just like that until your father arrived. Qin Wentian's heart trembled violently when he heard his grandfather's words. The tiny astral being was formed from the soul of a supreme expert? If that was truly a soul, given my strength, wouldn't I be easily corroded by it? Qin Wentian asked. You are thinking too much. That person used his divine sense to envelop the 9 heavenly layers. I'm guessing that he has already achieved transcendence, and is very close to that step where no one in the supreme ancient immortal realms could reach. His ambitions are extremely great, wanting to take over the 9 heavenly layers for himself, transforming them into the power of his soul. He didn't want to limit himself to just condensing a connection with the 9 constellations. He wants to reach a supreme peak, becoming an existence that transcends the 9 heavenly layers. In addition, he has already accomplished it. However, I suspect that he was only one step away, but he still failed in the end. This is why he transformed himself into the heaven vault, waiting for his descendants to come and complete his long-cherished wish. Qin Tiangang slowly spoke. Qin Wentian's heart pounded violently. He thought of the countless astral fragments in the tiny astral being. They were able to seal memories, and the tiny astral being was like a universe, able to contain millions and millions of constellations. This was extremely similar to his grandfather's conjecture. Using his divine sense to envelop the 9 heavenly layers, he was unwilling to be below the 9 heavenly layers. He wanted to transcend, becoming an existence that surpassed the 9 heavenly layers. Such ambition, such strength, how could the hearts of people not tremble? Grandfather suspects that this person is none other than the first-generation overlord of the heaven region. God King Shi? Qin Wentian asked. Qin Tiangang nodded. When I obtained the tiny astral being, I explored it. Your father must have done so as well. Right now, I also have no idea what would happen if the tiny astral being was in your body. But since fate arranged for it to leave its mark on the bodies of our 3 generations, I believe that you, Wentian, would be able to unravel its ultimate secret. Let's hope so. Qin Wentian nodded. Is this place where gods died very dangerous? There are many unknown danger zones. I'm guessing that this is the energy left behind in God King Shi's boundless sea of consciousness. There wouldn't be any problems for 1 or 2 days, but what about 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years? You would eventually encounter danger. This is also the reason why many people who entered here all died. Because they couldn't exit and were trapped here for countless years, they would eventually encounter death. However, you have the core of everything. You would definitely be able to exit this place. Back then your father also exited this place. Qin Tiangang spoke. Qin Wentian nodded. It was indeed like what his grandfather said. After they entered, they didn't encounter any danger at all. There might only be a few dangerous places, but after being trapped here for countless years, there would definitely be a day where they would encounter danger, unless they could exit this place. The tiny astral being has been acting strangely. I haven't tried to sense it yet. Qin Wentian spoke. Grandpa believes that you will be able to do it. Find your father if he is still alive. Qin Dangtian patted Qin Wentian on his shoulder. After that, Space-time intent flowed as Qin Tiangong's figure gradually turned illusory. His incomparably tyrannical figure now had a warm smile on his face as he stared at his grandson. His figure grew more and more blurry. "Grandpa." Qin Wentian felt pain in his heart when he saw this scene as he called out. "Grandpa is already very happy to be able to meet you here in space-time. Child, in the future you have to walk your own path." Qin Tiangang laughed. His figure gradually dissipated, transforming into nothingness like he had never appeared before. It was hard to imagine that not long ago, he was here, fighting against the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. Qin Wentian stood there in a daze. Behind him, a figure walked to Qin Wentian's side. This figure was none other than Luo Xinchuan. He also stared at Qin Tiangong's vanishing figure as he felt many emotions in his heart. Before this, he had heard everything. Qin Wentian naturally didn't need to hide anything from his grandfather. "Your grandfather, what a pity. He was an overlord of an era. He could originally dominate the supreme ancient immortal realms." Luo Xinchuan sighed. "Grandfather, you have heard everything earlier. I will sense the tiny astral being now, and see if we can leave this place as soon as possible." Qin Wentian spoke. Luo Xinchuan nodded. After that, Qin Wentian sat down cross-legged and sent his will into the tiny astral being. After he entered the god's extinction path, the tiny astral being had been reacting. However, he had been fleeing for his life and didn't have the time to sense it. Now he could finally sense the changes. When Qin Wentian sent his will into the tiny astral being, he discovered that an extremely complicated world appeared in the tiny astral being. It was like a maze, with tens of thousands of connections and endless corridors intersecting with each other. Didn't this world perfectly match the scene in the god's extinction path? Back then, his grandfather must have sensed it as well. This was why he had such a bold guess. Sadly, back then when his grandfather obtained the tiny astral being, he was already on the verge of death. If not, he would have been able to leave this place. "Grandfather, it shouldn't be a problem to leave this place after spending some time. If I can control it completely, I'm afraid it wouldn't be as simple as leaving this place." Qin Wentian opened his eyes and spoke. Luo Xinchuan's eyes flashed. He didn't expect the truth to be like this. In that case, those heavenly deities who came here to explore the god's extinction path most probably only left them with danger. To them, the secret basically didn't exist. It only existed for Qin Wentian. Several years later, in the god's extinction path, Qin Zheng and his group were still inside. Their expressions were extremely unsightly to behold. "What damnable place is this?" A heavenly deity cursed in a low voice. In here there were basically no secrets at all. There was only danger. There was no need to even think about good fortune. Also, they, Qin Wentian, were able to capture them and even narrowly escape death. What is that? At this moment, their gazes turned ahead only to see a destructive current gushing towards them. Qin Zheng's expression changed. He turned and spoke, "Let's go." After speaking, the group of them didn't hesitate and turned to flee. As for the other heavenly deities who entered the god's extinction path, they all had similar encounters. Although the majority of the time was very safe, they were like drifting aimlessly, with no end in sight. Occasionally they would even encounter danger. As for the good fortune and secrets they imagined, there was nothing at all. What made them feel even more terrified was that even their messaging crystals were ineffective here. They had no way to contact the outside world. It was like they were in a different space-time. How could they contact each other? Today, at the end of the ancient path, above the 9 heavenly layers, there were some powerful existences cultivating. Those who entered seemed to have disappeared. Many people were worried, especially for the experts from the various major powers. If something happened to those people, an earthquake would surely occur in the supreme ancient immortal realms. At this moment, in the desolate land of darkness, 2 figures walked out. The 2 of them were extremely fatigued and their robes were tattered. But even so, they walked out of the darkness and returned to the ancient heaven vault path. "Finally we are out." Qin Wentian stared at the ancient path. He only felt that he had passed through several centuries. The process of them exiting was too difficult to endure. That place was simply too vast, it was boundlessly vast. As for the other people who entered, it was unknown where they went. Even if Qin Wentian wanted to find them, it would be hard for him to do so. He could only bring his grandfather out of there. Chapter 1894. The 9 heavenly layers were still as resplendent as ever, towering above the 9 heavenly layers. At this moment, some experts froze when they saw Qin Wentian and Luo Shenchuan. They actually managed to exit the god's extinction path. What did they experience in the god's extinction path? What about the other experts who entered? Why didn't they see them? Back then, after Qin Wentian and his group entered the god's extinction path, there were some other heavenly deities who entered as well. But now no one knew where they went. It was said that there were people in the outside world who tried to contact them, but there was no reply. Nobody knew what they experienced in the god's extinction path. Qin Wentian naturally wouldn't explain anything to everyone. He took out his messaging crystal and informed his family that he was safe. After that, he flew towards the 9 heavenly layers. He still wanted to probe the secrets of the tiny astral being. The 9 heavenly layers should be the most suitable place for him to do so. Grandfather, I'm going to cultivate. Qin Wentian spoke. Ever since he comprehended the Tao, he was hunted down by Qin Zheng, Qin Dangtian and the others. After that, he entered the god's extinction path and experienced many years in there. He didn't have time to calm his heart and cultivate. Right now he needed to stabilize his cultivation base. The secrets of the tiny astral being were also waiting for him to probe. As for the Qin clan, Qin Zheng, Qin Dangtian, and the others should be trapped in the god's extinction path now. It was unknown if they would be able to exit or not. But even if they couldn't, the Qin clan was still around. Back then, the one who gave the order to deal with his father was clearly someone with a higher status compared to Qin Zheng. For example, his father, Qin Ding. Go on. Luo Shenchuan knew Qin Wentian's thirst for cultivation now. He nodded his head. The experience this time around caused him to feel some emotions in his heart. Qin Tiangong's strength, as well as the secrets of the Heaven Vault. He also hoped that he could grow stronger. After all, he also had a mission on his shoulders. The Luoshan clan. Although the Luoshan clan was now divided, he still hoped that the Luoshan clan would be able to regain its former glory and stand at the peak of the desolate region. Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he left, heading towards the boundless starry space. In the 9 heavenly layers, he didn't head to any of the constellations. Instead, he came to the center of the boundless starry space. He sat cross-legged in the air and closed his eyes, sensing the boundless astral light, channeling the astral light into the tiny astral being in his sea of consciousness. It has been a very long time since he did this. He didn't probe the secrets of the tiny astral being. Back then when his father passed the tiny astral being to him, his mother was extremely moved. She didn't know if his father had unraveled the secrets of the tiny astral being back then. As astral energy was channeled unceasingly into the tiny astral being, the vast starry space within also seemed to glow a little brighter. However, the tiny astral being seemed to contain boundless starry space and countless constellations. When astral energy was channeled into it, Qin Wentian discovered that the tiny astral being was only slowly lighting up. In the past, he used astral energy to light up the tiny astral being, because he wanted to search for the memories left behind by his father. But now he wanted to probe the secrets of the tiny astral being. The tiny astral being was like a bottomless pit. It greedily absorbed the astral energy endlessly, yet it had no way to fill it up. However, Qin Wentian didn't give up so easily. He continued to draw astral energy into the tiny astral being. He didn't believe that there wouldn't be any reaction from the tiny astral being. Time flowed by day after day. Although it was as dull as before, at the very least, it could be considered as cultivation. Qin Wentian couldn't sense the flow of time as he repeated the process year after year. However, no matter how much effort he put in, it was useless. He felt somewhat powerless and even had thoughts of giving up. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't be able to persist for so many years. But now, he was much more patient compared to the past. He had already arrived at a different realm, the highest realm of cultivation. If you continue like this, it would only be futile. At this moment, a voice rang out in Qin Wentian's mind, causing Qin Wentian's body to violently tremble. His eyes abruptly opened as a resplendent light shot out. However, there was no one in his surroundings. Who is it? Qin Wentian spoke. You have always been trying to sense my secrets, yet you don't even know that I'm talking to you? That voice rang out once more. Qin Wentian's heart pounded violently. He could sense that the tiny astral being was currently radiating a faint glow. How can this be? Qin Wentian discovered that the tiny astral being could actually speak. Could it be like what his grandfather had guessed? This tiny astral being was actually formed from the soul of an extremely powerful character? That extremely powerful character might very well be the founder of the heaven region, God King Shi. Is this really formed from Senior's soul? Qin Wentian asked. What are you talking about? The other party counter-asked, as though he didn't know what Qin Wentian meant. This caused Qin Wentian to furrow his brows. Could it be that the other party didn't hear the conversation between him and his grandfather? Senior didn't exist all along? Qin Wentian asked. Of course not. I merely sealed a strand of my remnant will in here. Now that it has been awakened by you, it appeared. The other party replied. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. Seems like his hard work through these years was useful. He actually managed to awaken the remnant will the other party left behind. Senior you are? Qin Wentian asked. Who I am isn't important. I'll tell you some things now. Listen carefully. The voice of the other party contained an unquestionable tone. However, Qin Wentian didn't mind it. If his grandfather's guess was correct, this existence who left behind the remnant will might very well be the founder of the heaven region, the God King of the heaven region. I was born in the immortal realms and cultivated like all other living beings. At the end, I reached the peak of this world and became one of the strongest existences. However, I discovered to my sorrow that I'm still a lowly existence living under the shadow of the 9 heavenly layers. Stellar martial cultivators cultivate by borrowing the astral energy from the 9 heavenly layers. However, where did these astral energy originate from? Was there a supreme expert who created this astral river, enveloping the 9 heavenly layers, and becoming the source of our cultivation? The other party slowly spoke, as though he was seeking knowledge. When one's cultivation reached the pinnacle, they would want to explore some ultimate secrets. Clearly, this existence was like this. After he grew strong enough, he finally started to explore the 9 heavenly layers. In fact, he even suspected if there was a supreme expert who created this world, creating the 9 heavenly layers. Everyone in the world says that humans can triumph over the heavens. My will is the heavens, representing the heavenly Tao. Although it seems that I can be arrogant, so what? Why is the heavenly Tao still shrouded by the 9 heavenly layers? Since humans can triumph over the heavens, why can't we transcend the 9 heavenly layers? Why must we be limited to the cultivation conditions created by the 9 heavenly layers? I'm unwilling to accept this. I want to explore the ultimate secrets of cultivation. I came to the 9 heavenly layers, and even wanted to leave this world. In the boundless universe, are there still other worlds? The 33 immortal realms, the millions and millions of particle worlds, the 9 heavenly layers, all of them form this world. But the starry space is boundless. The universe is boundless. Is the world we live in as insignificant as a particle world? I'm unwilling to accept this. I want to transcend this world. I want the 9 heavenly layers to no longer be shrouded by the 9 heavenly layers and become a part of my cultivation. The pinnacle of the Tao should be above the 9 heavenly layers. That voice continued, his tone filled with incomparable arrogance. He has already proven his Tao, but he was still unwilling to accept this. He wanted to transcend. He wanted to walk to the peak, wanting to become the ruler of the 9 heavenly layers. When one reached their cultivation realm, they would naturally have different pursuits. He once met the God King of Time in the past. Wasn't he also searching and pursuing? He hoped that one day, he would be able to freely traverse the past and the future, becoming the controller of time and space. This was the pursuit of those who stood at the peak. Power to them might no longer have much temptation. For example, the mysterious white-robed young man Qin Wentian met in the Tiandao Sacred Academy. If he wanted to establish a power in the supreme ancient immortal realms, he could easily make it stand at the peak because his personal strength was sufficient to topple everything. Ultimately, I'm still a little bit lacking, just a little bit more and I would be able to accomplish it. However, I have no way to cross over. I hope that there will be someone who can cross over, and let me see what the scenery is like in that domain. Let me see what the true 9 heavenly layers are like. Hence, I use my own body to transform into the heaven vault. Qin Wentian's heart trembled when he heard this voice. Was it really like what his grandfather guessed? The heaven vault was actually transformed from a supreme existence. He used his own body to transform into the heaven vault, connecting to the 9 heavenly layers. What heaven-defying method was this? What you have now is formed from my soul. It encompasses the 9 heavenly layers. If you want to obtain its secrets, just relying on this alone is far from enough. Unless there comes a day when you can absorb the energy from all the constellations in the 9 heavenly layers. At that time, I shall be your final astral soul. That voice was ethereal and dragged on for a long time before it gradually dissipated, like it had completely vanished. That was only a strand of remnant will that was sealed within the tiny astral being. Although that voice disappeared, Qin Wentian's heart was unable to calm down. His heart pounded unceasingly. One day when he can absorb the energy from all the constellations in the 9 heavenly layers, I shall be your final astral soul. This tiny astral being would eventually transform into an astral soul, his ultimate astral soul. But the prerequisite was that he had to be able to absorb the energy from all the constellations in the 9 heavenly layers. This by itself was already an extremely difficult problem. It was basically impossible to accomplish. But the goal of that mysterious expert was to surpass the 9 heavenly layers. If it wasn't difficult, how could he surpass the 9 heavenly layers? Surpassing the 9 heavenly layers, truly transcending. Qin Wentian didn't know if such an existence existed in this world. In that case, that mysterious white-robed young man was able to shatter a constellation with a single finger. Could he have transcended and belonged to such an existence? Other than him, the God King of Time whom he met before most probably didn't manage to accomplish this. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and sank into contemplation. The shock in his heart was unable to calm down even after a long time. Wanting to absorb the energy from all the constellations in the 9 heavenly layers? How could this be done? Chapter 1895. When stellar martial cultivators cultivated, they needed to form an innate connection with their constellations and condense their astral souls. After that, they would be able to absorb the astral energy from the constellations in the heavenly layers. It was basically impossible to do so. If all the constellations in the heavenly layers became their constellations, wouldn't that mean that they had to condense countless astral souls? How could this be possible? However, that person could be the legendary deity King Shi. He wanted to transcend the 9 heavens, and the Ling clan was above the 9 heavens. Naturally, he wanted to walk a path that no one had ever walked before. Otherwise, why would the Ling clan be above the 9 heavens? Grandfather. Qin Wentian took out his messaging crystal and contacted his grandfather, Luo Shenchuan. Wentian, what's wrong? Luo Shenchuan's voice rang out. In the history of the supreme ancient immortal realms, was there anyone who could absorb astral energy from the constellations? Qin Wentian asked. Luo Shenchuan hesitated for a moment. Qin Wentian's question was out of his expectations. I've never heard of anyone accomplishing this before. Naturally, there might be powerful existences that I'm not aware of who have done it before. Luo Shenchuan replied. Naturally, maybe in the future, my grandson would be able to do it. Haha. Obviously, he knew the purpose of Qin Wentian's question. Qin Wentian must want to take a heaven-defying path. But I don't know where to start. Do you have any suggestions, Grandpa? Qin Wentian asked again. Grandpa had been in the divine realm for many years, so he didn't know if he could give him some advice. You've stumped me. Do you know that the cultivation of demonic beasts is different from humans? They can directly absorb astral energy from constellations of the same attribute. For example, that heaven-devouring beast companion of yours, as long as it's a constellation with devouring energy, it would be able to sense it. This is the innate talent of demonic beasts. Humans, on the other hand, have to depend on their astral souls for their cultivation. If they want to form an innate connection with the constellations in the sky, they would need to have an incomparably strong perception of astral energy. Luo Shenchuan slowly spoke. However, from what I know, it's extremely rare for a power in the supreme ancient immortal realms to be able to surpass the limits of astral souls and absorb astral energy from constellations. However, there's one power that has a deep connection with you. That power is none other than the Qin clan. Qin clan. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. From what I know, the ultimate profoundness of the Qin clan's bloodline is able to fuse the Daos of a myriad of laws. The experts of the Qin clan are known to be able to cultivate a myriad of laws. Most probably, their perception of constellations should be extraordinary. Luo Shenchuan spoke. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed. The power of his bloodline had always been with Di Tian. Di Tian's original body had lost his bloodline because of the calamity back then. The bloodline of my Luoshan clan is also outstanding. If you awaken your divine rearing talent, you would be able to sense the constellations of countless demonic beasts and summon a myriad of demonic beasts. If your two bloodlines can fuse together, you might have a chance. Luo Shenchuan slowly spoke. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He had inherited both the bloodlines of the Qin clan and the Luoshan clan. Also, it seemed that he was the only one in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Grandpa, let me try. Qin Wentian transmitted his voice. Luo Shenchuan nodded and didn't say anything else. Qin Wentian has already reached this step. From now on, Luo Shenchuan wouldn't be able to provide any help to Qin Wentian. Everything would have to depend on Qin Wentian himself. Today, in the Azure Mystic Immortal Realms, Qin Wentian's other body, Di Tian, who had been in a state of cultivation, set off. His destination was the Heaven Vault secret realm of Boundless City in the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. Many days later, Di Tian's other body arrived at the Heaven Vault, in the 9 heavenly layers. He came together with Qin Wentian. In the past, he used the Great Nirvana immortal art to create an avatar. His two bodies each comprehended different Daos and walked on different paths. But this time around, the two of them came together to cultivate. They sat side by side, comprehending the energy of the constellations in the sky. Both of them were comprehending the Tao at the same time. In the blink of an eye, several years passed. However, even though both of them were comprehending the Tao at the same time, Qin Wentian still had no way to accomplish this. In the starry space, he could at most sense energy of the same attribute as his astral soul, and absorb it. For example, he had a sword attribute astral soul, and could absorb the astral energy of many sword attribute constellations. But if he didn't have this attribute, he wouldn't be able to do this. He thought back to when he was in the world of reincarnation. Only in that world would he be able to sense the energy of all attributes. Sadly, he didn't have the chance to do so back then. I want to make another trip to the Tiandao Sacred Academy, to the world of reincarnation. Qin Wentian silently mused. After that, he departed and prepared to head to the Tiandao Sacred Academy. He hoped that the elders of the Tiandao Sacred Academy would allow him to enter the world of reincarnation again. Di Tian's body stayed behind, but he didn't continue to sit in the starry space to comprehend. Instead, he headed to a different constellation. He was preparing to walk around the constellations and sense the different attributes of the constellations. Qin Wentian knew how difficult it would be this time around. But he had to do his best. Qin Wentian returned to the ancient Heaven Vault pathway and continued on his way back. There were many cultivators here. The Heaven Vault has long since caused a huge commotion in the supreme ancient immortal realms. It was unknown how many powerful world overlords and experts from the 8 regions came here. And this was only within the Heaven Vault. It was unknown how many experts in the outside world had no way to enter the Heaven Vault. On the way back, he saw a beautiful figure. Her robes fluttered in the wind as she stood on the ancient path, staring at the starry space. This scene was extremely beautiful. This figure was none other than the #1 beauty of the heaven region, Goddess Nikhang. Qin Wentian walked towards Goddess Nikhang. Goddess Nichang's beautiful eyes turned over. They were as calm as water as she stared at him. There were no fluctuations in her beautiful eyes, like she didn't know Qin Wentian at all. Qin Wentian wanted to say something but he hesitated. He didn't know what to say. Goddess Nikhang once saved him before but now, she was engaged to someone from his enemy, the Qin clan. He naturally didn't wish for them to stand on opposing sides one day. Between him and her husband, one of them had to die. Naturally, the prerequisite was that Qin Wentian had to come out alive. However, he felt that it was a little strange for him to pass on the message to his father. Given the hatred between him and the Qin clan, would Goddess Nikhang believe his words? I met your father in the god's extinction path. Qin Wentian finally spoke. Goddess Nichang's body trembled. Her beautiful eyes, which had never wavered before, finally flashed with a strange light. Her beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian as she asked, "Is my father still alive?" Her voice was trembling slightly. Everything left behind by her father had vanished. This meant that he had truly died. However, Qin Wentian actually said that he met her father in the god's extinction path. Qin Wentian shook his head and continued, "The god's extinction path is a chaotic spacetime. The father I met was from a spacetime of the past." A spacetime of the past. Goddess Nichang's voice trembled. The glimmer of hope that just rose was instantly extinguished. She stared at Qin Wentian. "The father you met, how was he like?" "We met by chance in a spacetime. Your father, Senior Chumo, was playing the flute. He was very handsome and bore some resemblance to you. He seemed so carefree and carefree. At that time, I was being pursued by Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian. Your father helped me." Qin Wentian sighed. "Back then in the world of reincarnation, you helped me. Now in the heaven vault, I even received Senior Chumo's help. Seems like I owe you more and more. How did he help you?" Goddess Nikhang asked. It was like she wanted to know everything about her father, even if it was in a spacetime of the past. "He used the sound of his flute to send me to another spacetime, allowing me to meet with my grandfather, Qin Tiangang." Qin Wentian spoke. "After that, I never saw him again. I didn't even have a chance to thank him. I can only thank you." "He didn't mention me?" Goddess Nichang's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian, feeling somewhat nervous. Could it be that her father didn't think of her? "He did." Qin Wentian nodded. Goddess Nichang's beautiful eyes trembled as she asked, "What did he say?" "When I met your father, Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian were both present. Also, I told them about the engagement between you and Qin Dangtian. Your father knew that Qin Zheng wanted to deal with me and told them to stop. Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian didn't agree. Hence, your father used the sound of his flute to send us to another spacetime to meet with my grandfather. Before that, your father transmitted his voice to me, telling me to tell you and your grandfather that he doesn't agree to this marriage." Goddess Nikhang stared at Qin Wentian's eyes and fell silent for a moment. After that, she spoke in a light voice. "Only this sentence." "MHM." Qin Wentian nodded. He could see that Goddess Nikhang didn't suspect anything. On the contrary, she seemed a little disappointed. It was like she wanted to know more about her father. "I understand. Thank you." Goddess Nikhang spoke softly to Qin Wentian. After that, she lifted her foot and continued on the ancient path. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. Qin Wentian started. After that, he seemed to have thought of something. He abruptly turned and called out, "What do you want to do?" "Go and find him." Goddess Nikhang didn't turn her head back. However, Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he instantly blocked her path. "Have you gone mad? Even heavenly deities have no way to exit the god's extinction path. I only managed to exit it because I had a stroke of good fortune. Qin Zheng, Qin Dangtian, and the others might stay there forever. If you enter, you would simply be courting death. Also, you might not be able to meet your father. This has nothing to do with you." Goddess Nikhang coldly spoke. After that, she walked past Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was speechless. Did this have anything to do with him? In the world of reincarnation, you once protected me, not allowing me to turn into an evil devil. In fact, you even faced the danger of being killed by me. In that case, what happened today naturally has something to do with me. Qin Wentian's back faced Goddess Nikhang as he slowly spoke. After that, his silhouette flashed as he actually pulled Goddess Nichang's arm, not allowing her to continue forward. He couldn't watch Goddess Nikhang throw her life away. Let go. Goddess Nichang's expression was like ice as she coldly stared at Qin Wentian. I'll have to offend you. Qin Wentian spoke. After that, a powerful wave of Tao might gushed forth, enveloping Goddess Nikhang. Qin Wentian used his powerful spatial energy to bind her. After that, he directly brought her back, preparing to bring her out of the heaven vault. It was too dangerous for her to stay here. She might just be courting death. Impudent. Goddess Nikhang coldly stared at Qin Wentian, who was just inches away from her. Qin Wentian stared at her cold eyes. I'm indeed impudent. What can you do about it? As he spoke, he ignored her cold gaze and continued on his way back. On the way back, there were people who saw this scene and an uproar instantly broke out. Qin Wentian actually abducted Goddess Nikhang? Was he taking revenge on Qin Dangtian of the Qin clan? Someone had a look of rage on his face as he coldly stared at Qin Wentian. Goddess Nikhang, the #1 beauty of the heaven region, was actually abducted by Qin Wentian. What does this bastard want to do? Was he trying to humiliate Goddess Nikhang? However, Qin Wentian radiated heavenly might. Unless it was a heavenly deity, who would dare to obstruct him? Chapter 1896. Qin Wentian brought Goddess Nikhang with him as he flew out of the heaven vault. Outside the heaven vault, at the point where the sea and sky connected, there were countless experts there. When they saw Qin Wentian holding Goddess Nikhang captive, all of them were stunned. This was especially so when they saw Goddess Nikhang staring at Qin Wentian with anger and coldness in her eyes, as though she had suffered great humiliation. After that, they felt even more indignant. Hence, some people directly rushed out, wanting to attack Qin Wentian. However, they were all slapped away by Qin Wentian with a wave of his hand. Qin Wentian then brought Goddess Nikhang away and soared through the air. At the entrance of the heaven vault, at the point where the sea and sky connected, countless people glanced at each other in dismay. After that, countless voices of condemnation rang out. Bastard, who is he? That is Qin Wentian, Qin Yuanfeng's son. Someone exposed. So it is the traitorous disciple of the Qin clan. Shameless to the extreme, he actually dared to humiliate the #1 beauty of our heaven region. Many people were enraged. It was like the one who was humiliated was their girlfriend. That was the #1 beauty of the heaven region, Goddess Nikhang. In the hearts of countless experts in the heaven region, she was holy and sacred. No one dared to profane her. This was especially so to the people of Boundless City. Only Heaven's Son was worthy of her. But even though the marriage between Goddess Nikhang and Qin Wentian was spread out, many people still felt sad. But now, they saw Goddess Nikhang being abducted by a brazen lecher. From this, one could very well imagine how angry they were. Was he taking revenge on the Qin clan, taking revenge on Qin Wentian? The fiancé of Heaven's Son Qin Wentian, the #1 beauty of the heaven region, was abducted by someone. This news instantly circulated, causing a huge commotion in Boundless City. After that, this news spread to the heaven region. Qin Wentian's reputation as a lecher circulated like wildfire. The people of Boundless City were filled with grief and anger. They heard from the people outside the heaven vault that Goddess Nichang's expression was filled with grief and indignation. This caused them to involuntarily imagine Goddess Nikhang falling into the hands of this brazen fellow. Most probably, she would be tainted by him. They simply didn't dare to believe it, and they didn't want to believe it either. This bastard was too despicable. Naturally, this was a story for the future. The pitiful Qin Wentian still didn't know that he had already shouldered such a bad name, and this name would soon circulate through the supreme ancient immortal realms. He would become a famous lecher, a madman, a shameless and despicable character. Qin Wentian brought goddess Nikhang to Boundless City and asked her, "Where is your residence? I will send you back." Goddess Nichang's beautiful eyes were still staring at him with a cold expression, as though she was extremely angry. This was the first time she was treated so crudely by someone. Also, he even prevented her from searching for her father. Qin Wentian felt somewhat speechless when he saw the look in her eyes. However, it was fine if she hated him. He couldn't possibly watch as she courted death in the god's extinction path. Even those heavenly deities who could shake the heavens and earth died there. Goddess Nikhang was just a world overlord. No matter how high her talent was, there was no way for her to return. "It's fine if you hate me. You have saved me before and Senior Chu Mo has also helped me before. If you really met Senior Chu Mo in the god's extinction path, he most probably would only hate me for allowing you to enter. It's fine if you don't tell me. I will ask him myself. You don't want me to bring you everywhere to ask for directions, right?" Qin Wentian ignored Goddess Nichang's cold gaze as he calmly spoke. "I'll walk by myself." Goddess Nikhang finally spoke. Her tone was as cold as ever. "Fine. But if you don't listen to me, I will use force again." Qin Wentian didn't have any protective feelings for the fairer sex. Goddess Nikhang was completely speechless when she saw him. She had never met such a fellow before. If she hated him, he didn't want to see her die. How could she hate him? After Qin Wentian released her restraints, Goddess Nikhang flew towards a certain direction. Not long after, she arrived at the Chu clan, which was originally located in Boundless City. "Nikhang, you are back." Chu Shin was naturally happy to see his granddaughter returning home. His gaze landed on Qin Wentian, who was traveling with Nikhang, as a look of curiosity appeared on his face. His granddaughter was actually traveling together with an unfamiliar handsome young man, and even brought him back home. Also, this young man seemed somewhat familiar to him. But what was even stranger was that his granddaughter Nikhang had an unsightly expression on her face. It was like she had suffered a great grievance. "Junior Qin Wentian pays my respects to Senior Chu Shen." Qin Wentian bowed, adopting the etiquette of a junior. "Qin Wentian." Chu Shen's eyes flashed as he stared at the young man before him. "Son of Yuanfeng?" "That's Junior." Qin Wentian nodded. Chu Shen surveyed Qin Wentian as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. He was acquainted with Qin Tiangang and Qin Yuanfeng. Back then, Qin Yuanfeng would often come to visit him. He didn't expect that now, Qin Wentian would also come here. In that case, it could be said that he was acquainted with 3 generations of Qin Wentian's family. Not bad. Chu Shen nodded slightly. His demeanor was majestic and extraordinary. But when he glanced at his granddaughter, he saw that she still had a look of hatred on her face. He felt even more strange in his heart. According to Nikhang, she had once interacted with Qin Wentian in the world of reincarnation, and had even helped him before. Now, the two of them returned home together. It was just that the atmosphere was a little strange. "Why are you not leaving yet?" Goddess Nikhang coldly stared at Qin Wentian, not giving him any face at all. Chu Shin blinked his eyes. He stared at Nikhang. "Nikhang, is this how you treat a guest?" Qin Wentian bitterly smiled. He stared at Nikhang. "No matter what, I have to say a few words to Senior Chu Shin before I leave. If not, what if you go there after I leave?" "What's going on exactly?" Chu Shin asked. Senior Junior entered a forbidden ground in the Heaven Vault, and was fortunate enough to meet Senior Chu Mo. Qin Wentian spoke. After that, he recounted everything that happened. After Chu Shin heard it, he fell silent as he stared into the distance. His son was actually still in a certain space-time in the god's extinction path. No wonder Nikhang wanted to go there. Even for him, such a thought also appeared in his heart. Wentian did the right thing. Chu Shin spoke. "Nikhang, you are too willful. If you encounter any mishaps in the god's extinction path, what do you want this old fellow to do?" "Grandpa." Nichang's beautiful eyes flashed. She could go against Qin Wentian, but since Chu Shin was lecturing her, she could only accept it. "I will never allow you to be so impulsive. Do you understand?" Chu Shin solemnly spoke. Goddess Nikhang stared at the serious expression on her grandpa's face. She lowered her head, but she still nodded lightly and agreed. Only then did Chushan spare her. He turned his gaze to Qin Wentian. Wentian, luckily you stopped this, lass, or the consequences would be unimaginably dire. Lass. Qin Wentian stared at Goddess Nikhang with a strange look on his face. The #1 beauty of the heaven region was actually called a lass? Most probably, only Chushan, who was closest to her, would be able to do so. This is what Junior should do. Nikhang and Senior Chuemo are both my benefactors. How can I watch her enter the god's extinction path? Since I have already sent her home, Junior will bid my farewell first. Qin Wentian spoke. Why are you in such a hurry? Rest for a few days before you leave. I can also chat with you about the past of your father's generation. Chushan smiled. Goddess Nikhang inclined her head and cast a cold glance at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian sweated. How would he dare to agree? He hurriedly replied. Junior still has things to do and won't stay any longer. If there's a chance, I will pay a visit to Senior again. That's fine as well. Wentian, I'm old friends with your grandfather and father. There's no need for you to regard me as an outsider. If you don't mind, you can just call me Grandpa Chu. Could it be that you two juniors are acquainted with each other as well? In the future, feel free to visit me often. Chushan didn't try to persuade Qin Wentian to stay. Grandpa Chu, if there's a chance in the future, please visit me often. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded. After that, he bade farewell. I'll leave first. Chushan nodded. Qin Wentian departed, but after he walked for a short distance, he turned his head and spoke. Grandpa Chu, Senior Chuemo told me to bring flowers. He doesn't agree to the marriage between Nikhang and Qin Wentian. After speaking, he didn't stay any longer and directly departed, vanishing from sight. His final words caused Chushan to start. His son didn't agree to the marriage between Qin Wentian and Nikhang. But it was no wonder. Given his son's personality, he would surely say this. Chushan saw that Nichang's eyes were still as cold as ever as she stared in the direction where Qin Wentian left. He smiled. You hate him so much? How did he stop you from bringing you back? Goddess Nichang's beautiful eyes stiffened as a hint of panic flashed in them. Nothing much. I agreed to come back myself. Is that so? Chushan had a smile that was not a smile on his face. If she agreed herself, how would such a situation occur? Most probably, that brat would have forcefully acted against her. This brat was truly audacious, but his personality was truly carefree. No wonder back then when he asked his granddaughter Nikhang whose personality she liked more, she would say that Qin Wentian gave off a sense of distance. But from Qin Wentian he could see his true personality. He had the carefreeness of his father, Qin Yuanfeng. Goddess Nikhang nodded. She naturally wouldn't admit it. However, she didn't expect that not long after, the news circulated through Boundless City that the lecherous Qin Wentian had abducted Goddess Nikhang. Several months later, Qin Wentian came to the Tiandao Sacred Academy and sought an audience with the heavenly deity of the Tiandao Sacred Academy, wanting to enter the legendary place. After the heavenly deity of the Tiandao Sacred Academy consulted the headmaster, he agreed and specially allowed Qin Wentian to enter the legendary place. Qin Wentian once again entered the world of reincarnation. But this time around he was just an ordinary person. He had an ordinary identity and an ordinary life in the world of reincarnation. This was also what he wanted. He came to the world of reincarnation because he wanted to carefully sense the various laws of energy. This was the unique characteristic of this world. It wasn't restricted by astral souls. As long as one's comprehension ability was high enough, they would be able to sense any law energy. And when Qin Wentian entered the world of reincarnation for cultivation, his name as the lecherous deity had already circulated through the supreme ancient immortal realms. In addition, the news of him breaking through to the heavenly deity realm also circulated. The people of the world were shocked by his talent, but at the same time, they were filled with disdain for him. This should be the most shameless heavenly deity in the supreme ancient immortal realms. He just broke through to the heavenly deity realm, and he actually abducted the #1 beauty of the heaven region. The number one shameless heavenly deity in the supreme ancient immortal realms was none other than Qin Wentian. The pitiful Qin Wentian would never have imagined that his name would resound through the supreme ancient immortal realms in such a manner. After the Qin clan learned of this, many people were extremely unhappy and wanted to capture Qin Wentian. After all, Goddess Nikhang was already engaged to the heaven's son of the Qin clan. This news had already caused the Qin clan's reputation to be tarnished. This was simply an insult to the Qin clan. However, all of this had nothing to do with Qin Wentian. He immersed himself in his own cultivation, forgetting everything, forgetting the flow of time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.